Chapter 237. Hiss, everyone at the scene sucked in a breath of air. Everyone looked at the scene in front of them in fear and shock. C put his hands back into his pockets after kicking down the motorcycle that had gone out of control. He walked back to Yunjian's side as if nothing had happened. Only the motorcycle that was still spinning on the spot and the driver's cries for help announced that everything that had just happened was real. Situ Dun was the most frightened person at this moment. Situ Dun didn't like Ce. He thought that Ce was just a pretty boy. He didn't expect him to be so powerful. Situ Dun was not only shocked by this. Lin Wei turned his head when he heard the commotion. He was stunned when he saw Ce. Lin Wei strode over to Ce as fast as he could. He lowered his head respectfully and said to Ce, "Young master." An international motorcycle racer bowed his head to Ce. What did this mean? Everyone's eyelids twitched violently at this moment. Especially Situ Dun. One had to know that Situ Dun had bragged in front of everyone just now because he seemed to know something about Lin Wei. Now, Lin Wei had run over to Ce respectfully. Whenever Situ Dun recalled what he had done, he felt as if he had shot himself in the foot with a brick. He wanted to cry but had no tears. Yes. Ce nodded gently at Lin Wei. He glanced at the motorcycle that had gone out of control and said to Lin Wei, "You know how to deal with this." "Yes." Lin Wei replied. Yunjian's eyelashes fluttered. Her sharp eyes were also looking at the motorcycle. She also saw the difference. This motorcycle was obviously tampered with. Otherwise, why would it go out of control? Even if it had gone out of control, why would it crash into them alone when there were so many people here? There could not be so many coincidences in the world. It was obvious that someone had done something, and their target was Ce. "Let's go." Yunjian was still looking at the motorcycle when Ce suddenly turned around and grabbed her hand. His deep eyes stared at Yunjian as he held her hand and walked back the way they came. "Yunjian, are you leaving?" Chu Ning saw that Yunjian was about to leave and immediately called out to her. She was a little afraid of Ce now, so she spoke hesitantly. "She's leaving." Before Yunjian could reply to Chu Ning, Ce dragged her away. "Then I'll see you 2 days later." Chu Ning swallowed a mouthful of saliva. The thought of Ce's ferocious glare made her a little scared, but she still greeted Yunjian. "Okay." Yunjian nodded as she was dragged away by Ce. On the way down the mountain, it was dark all around and there were no street lights. "Did someone try to assassinate you just now?" Yunjian asked. She already knew that someone had tried to assassinate him. "Yeah," Ce said with a nasal voice. Just as Ce finished speaking, his deep and sharp eyes flashed. Yunjian also realized that something was wrong. Someone was coming. Just as Yunjian narrowed her eyes and was about to make a move, Ce wrapped his arm around her waist and rolled her into a thick bush at the foot of the mountain at lightning speed. Yunjian felt dizzy. Then, she saw Ce's enlarged handsome face above her. If there was anyone here, they would definitely be able to see the two of them hiding amidst the thick and tall grass in an ambiguous position. Yunjian was about to push Ce away when she heard a flurry of footsteps. She immediately stopped moving. Someone was coming. Of course, it was the group of people who wanted to assassinate Ce. If it weren't for Yunjian and Ce's sensitive ears, they wouldn't have been able to hear the sound. Ce was on top of Yunjian. His breathing gradually quickened. The milky scent of a young girl wafted into his nose. Yunjian's rosy lips were right in front of him. It was as tempting as a delicious pastry. At this moment, the footsteps were getting closer. Chapter 238. Yunjian's soft lips were kissed all of a sudden. Her eyes widened as she stared at Siyi's enlarged face. Shock. Surprise. Horror. She had lived for 16 to 17 years in her previous life and this life, but she had never been so intimate with a man. Not to mention kissing, she had never even held a man's hand. She had never even held his hand. Ce had actually kissed her. Furthermore, the group of people who wanted to assassinate Ce were still nearby. Of course, it was because the group of people who wanted to assassinate Ce was still nearby that Yunjian didn't make a sound. Otherwise, she would have pushed Ce away immediately. The price she had to pay for not making a sound was Ce's crazy kisses. Ce had never kissed a woman before. This was his first time kissing a woman, and it was also the first time he had the urge to lock the young lady in front of him tightly under his body. The group of people who wanted to assassinate Ce came closer and closer, but Yunjian didn't move at all. Ce controlled his strength. He kissed Yunjian's lips gently, but didn't make a sound that the group of people could hear. Yunjian's cheeks flushed red. She was holding back her breath from Ce's kiss. But that wasn't the worst part. Yunjian suddenly felt a warmth in her chest. He even put his hand on her chest. He even pinched it. Yunjian's beautiful eyes widened, and she reached out to push Ce away. Ce was caught off guard and was pushed away by Yunjian. At this moment, the group of people who wanted to assassinate Ce had already left. In her previous life, Yunjian was a secret agent, so she had naturally learned how to seduce people. Some secret agents would even use their bodies to seduce men, and only kill them at the last moment. Of course, Yunjian had never tried this before. Ever since she had debuted, no one was her match. In other words, she was so powerful that she didn't need to resort to such despicable tricks. It was precisely because she had learned this that Yunjian understood that those female agents used the moment when a man was at his lowest to kill him. It was obvious that Ce had really fallen for him, which was why he was pushed away by Yunjian. Yunjian wiped her red lips, stood up and walked forward. Seeing that Yunjian was angry, Ce quickly grabbed Yunjian's wrist and explained, "I didn't do it on purpose." He really didn't do it on purpose. Cough. Touch her breasts. It was just that she was too alluring and he couldn't control himself. Go away. Yunjian glared at Ce and flung her hands a few times only to realize that she could not shake off his grip. Yunjian's heart pounded even more violently. It was as if her heart would leap out of her body in the next second. She wanted to cover her heartbeat, but she could only feel it beating rapidly. I didn't do it on purpose. Ce repeated this sentence again. His beautiful eyes had a glimmer of light. He was supposed to be extremely arrogant, but he was willing to lower himself for her sake. His tone even sounded like he was begging for forgiveness. Yunjian pursed her lips. She suddenly recalled the moment when his lips were on hers. Suddenly, she felt her cheeks burning up. I'm going back. Yunjian didn't want to argue with him anymore. Okay. Ce revealed a handsome smile. Then, he looked at her with a gentle gaze. He held Yunjian's hand and walked down the mountain. Yunjian didn't resist. This was the first time she felt powerless. Her resistance was nothing in front of Ce. She was the #1 secret agent on the international secret agent ranking, the strongest boss of the Kosha mercenaries. Chapter 239. By the time Yunjian and Ce returned to the villa, Dongwon and Qin Yiru had already gone home. Dongwon and Qin Yiru were currently sitting in the living room facing a television as they enjoyed snacks while watching a drama. Dongwon came from a wealthy family, so it was not surprising that she could afford a television in this era. Chinyiru, on the other hand, was obviously planning to relax for the day as she and Dongwon watched the drama on the television together in a lively atmosphere. Chinyiru did not notice anything when she saw Yunjian and Ce coming back from the front door. She merely asked, "Xiaojian, Ae, you're back. Do you want to come and watch some TV together?" Dongwon saw Yunjian and Ce coming in one after another and Yunjian's cheeks blushing for some reason. She knew that her nephew must have done something terrible. In spite of it, Dongwon pretended that she did not see anything and greeted Yunjian and Ce like how Chinyiru did. "Mom, I'm tired from shopping today. I'll go to bed first," Yunjian said. "Okay, Xiaojian, go upstairs and rest if you're tired," Chinyiru said. Yunjian nodded and went upstairs. "Auntie, I'll go back to my room too." Ce went upstairs with Yunjian with a dark expression. "The kids aren't feeling well, are they?" Chinyiru watched Ce go upstairs worriedly and wanted to stand up to ask about it. "I already said that they are still children. We adults should mind our own business. Besides, they're all grown up, they should know better. Of course, they'll tell us if they're feeling unwell." Dongwon stopped Chinyiru and said with a smile. Chinyiru was relieved to hear that and calmed down to continue watching the television. Second floor. As soon as Yunjian went upstairs, Ce followed closely behind. However, he didn't do anything to her. Instead, he looked at her petite back and said, "Good night." When Yunjian heard Ce's voice, she was stunned for a moment before she strode back to her room. 2 days later, because it was school day, classes were still going on as usual. Gu Junjian had already applied for leave for Yunjian in advance. Ce was not in Longmen City these days. After all, as the leader of Anhun, he naturally had many things to do. It was just that in order to spend more time with Yunjian, Ce had put aside his work to come stay in Longmen City during the weekends when Yunjian was not staying in the dormitory. By the time they arrived at the military training camp, the other 6 had already arrived. Yunjian returned to the team. After the 7 of them reported their numbers, Gu Junjian told them in a serious tone, "I've said before that the mission this time is very difficult, but I believe that you can complete it successfully. Now, each of you go to the armory and pick a weapon that suits you and gather here. Remember, you can only pick one weapon." Gu Junjian stood where he was with his hands behind his back after he finished speaking. The 7 of them went to the armory at once. The armory here was actually a place to store hidden weapons. The weapons room here was equipped with all kinds of weapons. Once they entered the armory, Chu Xiangnan could not help exclaiming, "Wow, wow, wow, there are so many weapons. So cool. Hurry up and pick a weapon that suits you and gather outside." Lu Shiyun was much calmer as he picked up a pistol and walked out. "Yunjian, what weapon do you plan to pick?" Chu Ning looked at the weapons excitedly and asked Yunjian hesitantly. "This." Yunjian turned her hand and smirked, her chosen weapon already in her palm. It was a butterfly knife. Chapter 240. Pfft, she's indeed an ignorant fool. This kind of weapon can be bought anywhere. What's the use of it? Jiang Weiwei was very upset that Yunjian had taken the first place in the cross-country race. She could not help but laugh when she saw that Yunjian was only holding a butterfly knife. "What does it have to do with you what kind of weapon my Yunjian is using? Jiang Weiwei, you should mind your own business." Chu Ning was the first to speak up for Yunjian when she heard that. Jiang Weiwei's eyes turned fierce. She had looked down on them from the beginning, especially the newcomer Yunjian. However, this newcomer whom she looked down on actually surpassed her in the cross-country race last time. But so what? She was good at running, but that did not mean that she was good at everything else. Moreover, Jiang Weiwei was born into a military family. She had been training since she was young. Perhaps she had lost to Yunjian in running. However, that was not necessarily the case in other aspects. It was undeniable that Jiang Weiwei was a competitive person. Chu Ning and Jiang Weiwei looked at each other and did not say anything else. Both of them ignored each other. Yunjian did not hold it against Jiang Weiwei either. Soon, the group of people chose their weapons and left the armory. Of course, other than Yunjian, the rest of them chose firearms and other weapons. Most of them chose handguns. Gu Junjian stood outside and watched as the few of them returned to the team after choosing their weapons. He glanced at the weapons in their hands and paused when he saw the butterfly knife in Yunjian's hand. Other than Yunjian, the rest of them chose handguns or other weapons with high damage. Yunjian was the only one who could wield a weapon like the butterfly knife that required one's ability to wield it. Reporting, "We have chosen our weapons." As the team leader, Lu Shiyun did a head count and reported to Gu Junjian. "Okay." Gu Junjian nodded. Then, he began to announce the mission Yunjian and the rest were about to carry out. "Your mission location is in Country X's H province. There are 2 underworld forces in Country X, and they will soon conduct an arms trade, and your goal this time is to seize the arms. Remember, even if you can't take the firearms away, you have to make sure they don't complete the deal. As for the time and place where these 2 forces traded arms, we only have a rough idea. You'll have to go to Country X and investigate it in detail. Later, I will send a car to send you to Country X's H province. Remember, during the mission, you can only use code names." At this point, Gu Yunjian's tone was absolutely solemn. Also, Country X is an economically backward country. In Country X, the security is not as good as in Country Z. Especially for the underground forces, murder and arson are common. So, be careful. Under the tense and solemn atmosphere of Gu Junjian, everyone felt their hearts tighten. "Yes." The group of people responded. "Then get ready to set off immediately," Gu Junjian said. Country X was actually quite far from Country Z, but it was not separated by the sea. Therefore, as long as they passed the border, they could reach there by car. Gu Junjian sent someone to send them to Country X. The car drove for about a day and a night before they arrived. The person who sent Yunjian and the rest overtook Yunjian and the rest to H province and left. Lu Shiyun and the rest took some Country X currency that Gu Junjian gave them, and they quickly checked into a hotel. Country X's economic development was very backward, and this could be seen from the structure of the houses. Chapter 241. It was nighttime and the sky was completely dark. Yunjian's group of 7 sat around a round low table that was so old that it looked like it would fall with a push. Captain Lu Shiyun was holding a few sets of information. He distributed them to everyone and scanned them. "This set of information is the scope of our target this time," Lu Shiyun said. The rest of them immediately took the information and scanned through it. Yunjian only took a few glances at the piece of paper. These 2 underworld forces were the overlords of Country X. This time, the arms trade between the 2 forces could be considered an especially important matter in Country X. These 2 underworld forces were called the Flying Sky Gang and the Ironlock Gang. These 2 gangs were one gang. Country X did not have a large population, but these 2 gangs had about 1,000 people. As for the time and location of the other arms deals, even Gu Junjian had no way of finding out. If they wanted to disrupt the arms deal between these 2 gangs, they had to know the time and location of the deal. If they wanted to know the time and location of the deal, Yunjian's group of 7 had to investigate it themselves. Therefore, this mission was not suitable for the advanced special forces soldiers who often showed up. That was why Gu Junjian had said that they could not let the enemy suspect them at all during this period of time. If they wanted to understand this, they had to infiltrate the Flying Sky Gang and the Iron Lock Gang to investigate the situation. If they were caught and their identities were exposed, then the Flying Sky Gang and the Iron Lock Gang would be able to wantonly kill people in Country X. They would not be able to leave Country X alive. This was a matter of life and death, so it was not a small matter. Captain Lu Shiyun frowned and pondered for a long time before he suggested, since we don't know the exact time and location of the arms deal between the Flying Sky Gang and the Iron Lock Gang, we have to find out in the shortest time possible. Captain, I suggest we go to the Flying Sky Gang and the Iron Lock Gang tonight to find out more, Fong Xiaoran suggested. I think so too. Lu Shiyun nodded at Fong Xiaoran, then he pondered. Then, who should we send? Naturally, Azura and I will go. Both of us are the fastest runners. Even if we are detected by the enemy, we can retreat in time. Jiang Weiwei glanced at Yun Jian. She had already started using code names to address each other. Not only was Jiang Weiwei displeased with Yun Jian, but she was also displeased with everyone else present other than herself. But it was one thing to be unhappy with someone. She would also play some tricks on the person she was unhappy with. If there was one thing about Jiang Weiwei that people did not dislike, it would probably be that when it came to a critical moment, no matter how unhappy she was with someone, she would put away her feelings and complete the mission together with them first before taking revenge for her personal grudge. Lu Shiyun was silent for a while before nodding. Okay. Then Lu Shiyun turned to look at Yun Jian. You don't have any objections, right? I have no objections. Yun Jian grinned, revealing 2 rows of white teeth, and agreed. Now? Yun Jian asked Lu Shiyun. That's right. You guys get ready. Lu Shiyun stood up. His handsome face revealed a trace of seriousness. I don't need to prepare. Yun Jian smiled. She walked to her backpack, unzipped it, and took out a black bandage. Then she deftly placed the only weapon she had, the butterfly knife, on her waist and tied it tightly with the black bandage. After doing this, she lifted the corner of her shirt and stood up. She could hide a weapon like this. Everyone was stunned and dumbfounded. Especially Jiang Weiwei. She was still holding the shiny pistol in her hand and was still deciding if she should bring it out with her. The pistol was big and difficult to hide. Even if it was hidden on the body, it would be easily discovered. The butterfly knife, however, was different. If she tied it to her waist like how she was doing, unless someone lifted the corner of her shirt, no one would realize that she was hiding a knife at her waist. Chapter 242. Jiang Weiwei was the most embarrassed person in the group. She had previously mocked Yun Jian for choosing the butterfly knife as a weapon. But now that she thought about it, wasn't she the laughable one? Jiang Weiwei paused for a moment before tossing the pistol in her hand onto the table. Then, she took out a small Swiss Army knife from her backpack and stuffed it into her pocket. Pistols were very conspicuous. Naturally, they couldn't carry pistols, but they could carry knives. Moreover, they were only going to check out the situation tonight, not start the operation. Let's go. Yun Jian's eyes moved. She swayed her long hair that was tied up tightly and led the way out. Naturally, she was talking to Jiang Weiwei. Perhaps Yun Jian didn't really appreciate Jiang Weiwei, but since it was a mission, as long as Jiang Weiwei didn't do anything excessive, she wouldn't mind. Jiang Weiwei didn't respond to Yun Jian's words, but she followed her out. After Yun Jian and Jiang Weiwei left the room, Lu Shiyun and the others didn't stay idle. We'll split into groups and ask the residents about the Flying Sky Gang and the Iron Lock Gang. We'll gather back here in an hour. Lu Shiyun said to the other members. Thus, the group of people quickly dispersed. Some people in Country X's H province also spoke Mandarin. Only a small number of people were influenced by other languages. Therefore, there was no language barrier. Yunjian's figure dashed through the night. Her long hair fluttered as she ran in the dark night sky, drawing a beautiful arc. Behind her, Jiang Weiwei ran with all her might and barely caught up to her. One had to admit that Jiang Weiwei was pretty good. If it was someone else, they would have been left behind by Yunjian. In that document, the locations of the Flying Sky Gang and the Iron Lock Gang were also listed. However, there was no more detailed information. It was up to them to investigate all of this. Yunjian and Jiang Weiwei decided to check out the Flying Sky Gang. This was because the Flying Sky Gang was more powerful than the Iron Lock Gang. The Flying Sky Gang's base was on the busiest street in H province. In Country X, a province was about the size of a city in Country Z. There was a 5-story modern building at the end of the street. It was the most outstanding building in the circle of dilapidated houses. This was the headquarters of the Flying Heavens Gang. At the entrance of the building, there were 2 men guarding the door. One of the 2 gatekeepers was tall and the other was short. At this moment, they were watching the crowd at the entrance. This building was the headquarters of the Flying Sky Gang. At the same time, as long as one entered the building, they would see that the lobby on the 1st and 2nd floors was a high-class casino. How are we going to get in? Jiang Weiwei would ask for Yunjian's opinion at the critical moment. Now that they were a team, even if Jiang Weiwei didn't like Yunjian, she wouldn't act alone. What do you think? Yunjian glanced at Jiang Weiwei. Break in. Jiang Weiwei pressed her hand on the pocket of her Swiss Army knife and said with a sharp look in her eyes. Blend in. Yunjian glanced at her. With that, she messed up her hair and tore her clothes until they were slightly tattered. She even smeared mud on her clothes and fair cheeks. Then, she walked out of the darkness and walked towards the entrance of the building. Jiang Weiwei was stunned. She didn't know what was going on, but she still followed after Yunjian and dirted her clothes and face. Who are you? The tall gatekeeper stopped Yunjian and Jiang Weiwei in front of the brightly lit casino. Uncle, we're here to look for our father. He took the last bit of our family's savings to gamble here. We've been hungry for 2 days. We're really hungry. Mom is sick too. We don't have anything to eat, so we can only look for our father. Uncle, can you let us in to look for our father? Chapter 243. It had to be said that Yunjian's acting skills were superb. As a secret agent in her previous life, she had been specially trained. Not only did secret agents need the ability to kill in one move, but more importantly, they needed to know how to blend into the crowd and end the other party's life in one move when their guard was down and they were suspicious. Obviously, this was Yunjian's forte. And now, she was planning to blend in here. Perhaps it was because Yunjian's accent was exactly the same as the locals in Country X's H province, coupled with her pitiful appearance and her tattered clothes. Also, Yunjian and Jiang Weiwei were thin and weak to begin with. They really looked like they had been starving for a long time and came from poor families. Therefore, the tall man's heart softened. He and the short man discussed for a while and let Yunjian and Jiang Weiwei enter. Jiang Weiwei only realized after entering the door that Yunjian's acting skills were superb. Moreover, they would not be suspected if they entered the door like this. Yunjian only curled her lips slightly. She and Jiang Weiwei entered the door, turned the corner, and left the sight of the 2 men at the door. Then, they walked straight to a nearby washroom. Fortunately, there was no one in the corridor. Yunjian quickly entered the washroom with Jiang Weiwei. Yunjian washed the mud off her face quickly and tied her hair tie again. Jiang Weiwei followed suit. Yun Jian tidied up her clothes and tried to wipe the mud off her clothes with water. Then, she rearranged her clothes. At this moment, Yun Jian seemed to have changed into a different person. It was as if the pitiful little girl just now was just an illusion. The torn hem of the dress looked fashionable on Yun Jian in an instant. Even if there were some holes, they still had a natural beauty. Jiang Weiwei was dumbfounded. She could do this. However, she saw that Yun Jian had already walked to the casino on the second floor. Jiang Weiwei quickly patted the mud off her body and followed her. On the second floor of the casino, groups of gamblers were crowding around the gambling tables, shouting and yelling. The atmosphere was extremely majestic. No one noticed the arrival of Yun Jian and Jiang Weiwei at all. Of course, it was not like no one noticed Yun Jian and Jiang Weiwei. Yun Jian's looks were simply too outstanding. Even without any makeup, her skin still looked shiny and as delicate as a newborn baby's. "Hey beautiful, are you alone?" A handsome man with short hair walked over and struck up a conversation with Yun Jian. "No, I'm with my friend." Yun Jian smiled generously and pointed at Jiang Weiwei. She was still thinking about how to blend in without leaving a trace, but she didn't expect someone to strike up a conversation with her. This was just as well. The man looked at Yun Jian awkwardly. He was a little sorry that he didn't see Jiang Weiwei just now. Then he reached out his hand and introduced himself to Yun Jian. "My name is Miran. You can call me Xiao Li." "She's Xiao Shui." Yun Jian didn't reach out to shake his hand. Instead, she made up a name. When she lied, she introduced herself to Miran without blushing or skipping a beat. "Oh, nice to meet you." Miran didn't embarrassingly return his hand. He bent 45 degrees to the side and bowed to Yun Jian and Jiang Weiwei like a gentleman to show his friendliness. "So, what game do you two beauties want to play at the casino?" After Miran finished speaking, he sized up Yun Jian again, his eyes filled with indescribable nakedness. As expected, he wasn't a good person. However, Yun Jian pretended not to notice anything. She blinked and asked innocently, "What game?" Miran was one of the people in charge of the casino. When he heard Yun Jian's words, he became even more excited. His gaze seemed to be able to see through Yun Jian. However, in his heart, he thought, it's been a long time since he played with such a pure student. Chapter 244. Can I make any conditions if I win? Yun Jian blinked. Her innocent smile made Miran's heart itch. Jiang Weiwei stood by the side without saying a word. At this moment, she also knew that if she were to face such a scene, she would probably be exposed as soon as she spoke. And Yun Jian was actually able to disguise herself to this extent. Even Jiang Weiwei, who didn't have a good impression of Yun Jian at the beginning, had to admit that even if she were to believe that Yun Jian was an agent of a country trained by a special agent unit, she would believe it. Therefore, Jiang Weiwei didn't say anything. Their mission was to seize that batch of firearms. Right now, they were still on a mission, and Jiang Weiwei was with Yun Jian. Therefore, no matter how much she hated Yun Jian, she wouldn't trip her up. At this juncture, if Yun Jian was really exposed, Jiang Weiwei intended to help her. "Of course, I'm a man. I never lie." Miran patted his chest and promised. He softened his voice and continued to seduce Yun Jian. "Especially a cute girl like you. How could I bear to lie to you?" These rather ambiguous words made Yun Jian roll her eyes in her heart. Even Jiang Weiwei felt that Miran was disgusting. However, neither of them showed their emotions on their faces. "But, I don't know how to play this. What should I do?" Yun Jian glanced at the gambling crowd and said. Miran was confused by Yun Jian. He really thought that Yunjian had never gambled before. This was what he meant. Mirren chuckled and tried even harder to trick Yunjian. It's okay, I'll teach you. Besides, if you lose, I won't ask for anything too excessive. Of course, it wasn't an excessive request. Mirren had already made a plan in his heart. He wanted Yunjian to lose, then he would lure her step by step and trick her into bed. This was his real goal. He didn't believe that he wouldn't be able to charm such an innocent student. Of course, if Myron knew that Yunjian was not only the #1 secret agent, slaying God, in her previous life, but she had never met a match in the gambling circle. She was the lady gambler who was respectfully called the god of gamblers in this circle, yet she pretended to be a student who did not know how to gamble in front of him. Myron would probably be so angry that he would vomit blood. Yunjian was indeed known as the goddess of gamblers in her previous life. Back then, Yunjian had gambled wildly for an entire night at the internationally renowned Fengyun Casino. She had won a whole month's worth of profits from the Fengyun Casino, a total of $1 billion USD. In the end, Fengyun Casino had no choice but to beg her, the great Buddha, to leave. Okay. Yunjian pretended to be in a difficult position and nodded. Seeing that Yunjian had agreed, Mirren became even more excited. At the same time, from Yunjian's expression, he was even more convinced that Yunjian was gambling for the first time. In that case, was there any suspense to the outcome of this gamble? Of course, he would win. Come. Let's play over there. Mirren led Yunjian to a gambling table. He kicked away the gamblers who were still around the table and politely invited Yunjian to take a seat. Since it's your first time playing, little sister Shaoli, let's play a round of dice. As Mirren spoke, he picked up 3 dice and placed them in front of Yunjian. At the same time, he covered the 3 dice with a bowl. Chapter 245. Even the way he addressed Yunjian began to become a little ambiguous. It could be seen that Mirren was probably an expert in coaxing little girls. Yunjian smiled contemptuously, but the expression she showed in front of Mirren was an innocent and cute little face. At this moment, even Jiang Weiwei couldn't help but twitch in her heart. Fortunately, Mirren didn't notice her. Otherwise, with her performance, she would have been seen through long ago. This. Just shake the bowl like this. Yunjian continued to act like a novice who didn't know anything. Yes, the 3 dice are in the bowl. Shake it however you want, and then we'll guess the size of the dice. Mirren narrowed his eyes. He really thought that Yunjian didn't know how to play, so he patiently explained. The dice had 6 faces, and there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points on each of the 6 faces. The 3 dice were shaken under the lid of the bowl. After shaking the bowl, they opened the bowl to see the size of the 3 dice. The gamblers would announce the size of the dice before the dice began to roll. This was a form of gambling in the gambling arena, gambling dice. Miluan explained to Yunjian patiently, glancing at her from the corner of his eyes as he asked with a mischievous smirk, Shaoli, do you get it now that I've explained it this way? Understood. Yunjian pretended to be enlightened and nodded at Mirren. Then let's begin. Mirren narrowed his eyes and spoke in a wretched tone, little sister Shaoli, do you want to bet big or small? I bet big. Yunjian narrowed her eyes. Since Mirren wanted to give her a round, why should she reject his good intentions? Bet big? Little sister Shaoli, are you sure? If you bet big, you will lose. Are you sure you want to bet big? Mirren said loudly. At the same time, she glanced to the side and said to Yunjian. I'm sure. Yunjian also narrowed her eyes. At the same time, she reached out and covered the bowl with the 3 dice. Mirren had done something. In fact, Mirren had installed a regulator inside the bowl. The 3 dice were covered in the bowl, and the size of the dice could be controlled. In other words, if Yunjian bet big, the die in the bowl would become small. If Yunjian bet small, the die in the bowl would become big. No matter what, she couldn't win. And the person who controlled the regulator in the bowl was nearby. Coincidentally, Yunjian caught Mi Luan's glance just now. Following Mirren's gaze, she saw a man holding a square remote control beside an inconspicuous washroom in the distance. The man was holding a remote control that could adjust the size of the dice in the bowl in front of her. Mirren had just asked Yunjian loudly if she was betting big. She was probably conveying to the man holding the remote control in the distance that she, Yunjian, was going to bet big. Therefore, she asked the man to control the dice in the bowl to be small. The casino was messy, and there were all kinds of people, but the people who opened the casino would definitely ensure their profits. Therefore, many casinos would cheat to win. Mirren probably wanted to use this move to defeat her, but she didn't expect to be seen through by Yunjian. Little sister Shaoli, start shaking. Mirren made a gesture of invitation and said to Yunjian. Wait. Yunjian suddenly shouted to stop. She revealed an embarrassed expression and pretended to be embarrassed. I'm in a hurry. I want to go to the toilet before I come back. All right. Little sister Shaoli, you can go. There's no rush, haha. Mirren didn't notice anything different. He spoke generously. Chapter 246. Yunjian got up and gave Jiang Weiwei a subtle look before walking towards the washroom. Although Jiang Weiwei was surprised, she wasn't a fool. Other than her competitive nature, she was also very smart. She was considered a powerful character among the candidates for the special forces. These were all true. Jiang Weiwei quickly understood, but she didn't show any other expression as she was facing Mirren. Yunjian walked past Jiang Weiwei without a trace and headed towards the washroom. After a while, she walked out of the washroom again. It was as if nothing had happened. However, at this moment, the remote control in the hands of the man standing next to the washroom suddenly failed. No one noticed that the moment Yunjian walked over, the remote control in the man's hands was instantly scrapped. Yunjian returned to the opposite side of Mirren and sat down. She shook her wet little hands that had just been washed. Her fair and clean little face looked lovely and lovely. Mirren swallowed his saliva. The desire in his body was boiling. Little sister Shaoli, can we begin? Mirren couldn't help but urge. Okay. Yunjian took out a tissue and wiped her tender little hands like a little girl. She smiled at Mirren. Then, she reached out and touched the bowl. The 3 dice in the bowl were like a few small balls, making ping 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 sounds in the bowl. Yunjian shook her hands twice and stopped. She smiled at Mirren, only to see that he couldn't wait to lift the lid of the bowl. He couldn't wait to see Yunjian lose to him. At the same time, he could logically make his not excessive request. Thinking up to here, Mirren's mouth was still speaking with a hint of an evil smile. Little sister Shaoli, actually, there is a trick to playing this kind of dice. However, this is your first time playing, so even if you lose, it's normal. I can understand. After the last word fell, Mirren had already opened the bowl with a smile. The 3 dice in the bowl also appeared in front of everyone's eyes. 5, 5, 6. Big. It was actually big. Did this mean that Yunjian had won? Mirren stayed in the act of lifting the bowl for a long time, stunned. I won. Shouldn't you agree to my request and let me make a condition? Yunjian blinked. She smiled shyly and continued, you promised me. Jiang Weiwei was dumbfounded. She looked at the scene in front of her in disbelief. Who would have thought that Yunjian would actually win? She even gambled. Miran's face instantly darkened, and his face darkened. No one knew what this represented. He had installed a regulator in the bowl, so it was impossible for him to lose. The only possibility was, could it be, this little sister Shaoli, in front of him, she had seen through it long ago? Miran was not stupid. He was able to sit in the position of one of the people in charge of the Flying Sky Gang casino. Not only did he rely on brute force, but more importantly, he had to have a brain. He suddenly remembered Yunjian's action of going to the washroom just now. Miran's expression did not change. He stood up fiercely and slammed the table. Then, he glared at Yunjian and Jiang Weiwei. His expression suddenly changed. He flipped the gambling table over and shouted in all directions, "Arrest the two of them." Seeing Miran's sudden change in expression, Yunjian was not in a hurry. She had just been testing Miran. If Miran was stupid, then she would naturally be able to find out about the firearms. Unfortunately, Miran was not stupid. Yunjian narrowed her eyes. She watched as the gamblers around the casino ran away in fear. A group of people with guns rushed out from the back of the casino. Her expression did not change. Jiang Weiwei's face turned pale. The underworld here was not like the underworld in Country Z. Chapter 247. A group of Flying Sky Gang brothers with pistols surrounded Yunjian and Jiang Weiwei with Miran as the center. One by one, they pointed their pistols at Yunjian and Jiang Weiwei. Even Jiang Weiwei, who came from a military family and swore not to be afraid of sacrifice since she was young, couldn't help but shiver in the face of these pistols. Miran, who was standing at the front, stopped pretending. He smiled at Yunjian and snorted, "My little sister Shaoli, stop pretending. Ha, I originally wanted to play with you because you were beautiful, but since you came with ill intentions, don't blame us for being impolite." Miran had already listened to the teachings of the Flying Sky Gang's boss. Before the recent arms trade between the Flying Sky Gang and the Iron Lock Gang, anyone who was suspicious had to be cautious when coming into contact with them. That was why when Miran realized that something was wrong, he didn't say anything. He waited until he was sure before making a move. It turned out that Miran was already on guard. Yunjian's lips curled slightly. Jiang Weiwei stood back to back with Yunjian. Compared to Yunjian, Jiang Weiwei never thought that they would be exposed. This seemingly obsessed Miran was actually not as simple as she seemed on the surface. As expected, it was not easy to deceive. But the most despicable thing was that they only had knives in their hands, while the other party had so many people, and everyone was holding pistols. Jiang Weiwei finally knew why Gu Yunjian's tone was heavy when he asked them to complete the mission. However, she, Jiang Weiwei, was also a person who could bend and stretch. She never regretted the choice she had made. At critical moments, she would still throw all personal grudges to the back of her mind. Jiang Weiwei leaned against Yunjian's back and asked Yunjian in a low voice, "What should we do?" "Listen to my instructions." Yunjian also replied to her in a low voice. The interaction between Yunjian and Jiang Weiwei was not seen by Miran and the others. Miran, on the other hand, laughed heartily. One of Miran's subordinates suggested, "Lord Miran, these two women are probably undercover police agents, right?" Humph, you don't even look at yourself. How dare you behave atrociously in our Flying Sky Gang? Why don't we teach them a lesson? We'll *CK them right here so that we can have some fun too. What do you think? Ah. Ha ha ha. This was a casino, surrounded by gamblers who did not dare to escape. The dirty words of Miran's subordinate made a group of Miran's other brothers feel restless. Making love with these two women in public, it was probably going to be a different experience. You dare. Aren't you afraid that our people will avenge us? Although Jiang Weiwei was a woman who knew when to bow and submit, she would rather commit suicide than be humiliated to death. Thus, she clenched her teeth and said hatefully. Before Miran could speak, his subordinates began to mock Yun Jian and Jiang Weiwei on his behalf. Why wouldn't I dare? TSK, do you really think our Flying Sky Gang is an ordinary gang? Do you think I'm afraid of your people? Miran's subordinate continued to brag, and then he exaggeratedly used an example to show off the power of his Flying Sky Gang. Do you know Slaying God, the top secret agent on the international secret agent ranking? Look at how young you two are, I'm sure you don't know. Let me tell you. Even the younger brother of Slaying God, who was known as the strongest secret agent in the secret agent world, was arrested, and Slaying God went missing because of this incident. Our Flying Sky Gang was involved. Don't you think our Flying Sky Gang is powerful? Even a big shot like that was fooled by us. The more this person boasted, the more enthusiastic he became. He looked as if he was afraid that others would not know that he was from the Flying Sky Gang. However, this person did not know the actual facts. He only heard that Slaying God went missing because of this incident, and the Flying Sky Gang was also involved in the incident, so he could not help but exaggerate a little. What no one expected, however, was that Yun Jian's face darkened when she heard the man's words. Chapter 248. Jiang Weiwei stood close to Yun Jian's back. She could feel Yun Jian's body trembling when she heard Miran's subordinates boast. Outsiders did not know that the one thing that Yun Jian regretted the most in her previous life was not looking after her younger brother well. She swore that she would investigate her younger brother's death. It was not that she did not investigate after her rebirth. However, it was as if the incident had been purposely erased. She had been investigating for so long but to no avail. Today, she heard about it from a subordinate of the Flying Apsara Gang. The Flying Apsara Gang was involved in her younger brother's death. Yun Jian was thoroughly enraged. What did I say? Pfft. Don't you understand what I'm saying, little girl? I'm saying that the Flying Apsara Gang was involved in the murder of the younger brother of the international #1 agent, Slaying God. That kind of character is not something that you and I can imagine. Why, isn't this enough to show how strong the Flying Apsara Gang is? The last word, strong, was stuck in his throat. Before Miran's subordinate could finish a string of words, he fell to the ground with a puff and died with a kick of his legs. Everyone was shocked by the turn of events. There was a blade stuck in the neck of the dead man who suddenly fell to the ground. The blade was 3 inches into the neck and the force was enough to kill someone on the spot. For someone to be able to exert such strength, other than an assassin, it would be a special agent. The group looked in the direction where the flying dagger came from and saw Yun Jian playing with the flying dagger that came out of nowhere. Murder. Her blade can kill people. At that moment, a gambler lost control and exclaimed. There was a hint of horror in his words and his fear of Yun Jian. Miran and the rest were scared out of their wits by Yun Jian's action. No one saw how Yun Jian attacked earlier, but she had already killed someone. Kill her. Shoot them. Miran pointed at Yun Jian and Jiang Weiwei and yelled at his subordinates. At this moment, how could Miran still want to play with Yun Jian and Jiang Weiwei? She was someone who could kill someone right in front of everyone's eyes without letting anyone see how she did it. How terrifying was it? However, before Miran could react, Yun Jian had already moved. Her figure quickly shuttled between Miran's group of men who were still loading their guns. Wherever Yun Jian passed, people would fall to the ground and die. Until later, Miran's subordinates all died miserably. All of them had one thing in common, their throats had been slit. Yun Jian held the butterfly knife that she had taken out from her waist at some unknown time. A drop of blood dripped from the tip of the knife as she walked towards Mirren. So what if you have guns? You guys who don't know how to use guns are still a bunch of trash. Yun Jian shouted. At the same time, under the horrified gazes of the group of gamblers, Jiang Weiwei, and Mirren, she stepped on a pistol that had fallen to the ground closest to her. With a stomp, the gun flew off the ground and was firmly grasped by Yun Jian. Let me teach you how to use a gun. Yun Jian looked at Mirren and said faintly. Then, she pulled the wrench and pulled the trigger. Bang! The bullet flew into Mirren's thigh. Mirren screamed and fell to her knees uncontrollably. You! What do you want? What do you want? Do you want the time and address of my Flying Sky Gang and the Ironlock Gang? I'll tell you everything. As long as you let me go. Mirren endured the pain and said hurriedly. Ha! Yun Jian sneered and revealed a strange smile. Too late. I've changed my mind. Your Flying Sky Gang will become a member of history. After that, the sound of a bullet piercing through flesh was heard. Mirren's eyes widened as she fell back. Jiang Weiwei looked at the scene in front of her and was stunned on the spot. She did not expect Yun Jian to be so powerful. They were facing a group of armed underworld forces. She even killed all of them. More importantly, Jiang Weiwei considered one thing. Yun Jian's expression changed when Mirren's subordinates mentioned slaying God, the top secret agent ranking. Yun Jian's current code name was Slaying God. Slaying God and Slaying God were pronounced the same. Chapter 249. Although that was what Jiang Weiwei thought, she quickly tossed the thought to the back of her mind. Even if Yun Jian was related to the agent, Slaying God, now was not the time to think about it. Yun Jian had gone on a killing spree here. She had killed so many people from the Flying Sky Gang, so there was no way the Flying Sky Gang and the Ironlock Gang would not let this slide. In that case, they would not be able to avoid arousing suspicion during the mission. Their original goal was to find out the time and address of the arms deal between the Flying Sky Gang and the Ironlock Gang. Then, when the two gangs started the deal, everyone would work together to seize the arms. However, now that they had alerted the enemy, the Flying Sky Gang and the Ironlock Gang would probably change the time and address of the deal. They might even send people to be more vigilant against them. Jiang Weiwei did not deny Yun Jian's skills and what she had done just now. When she saw Yun Jian's ability, she even had the urge to cheer and applaud loudly. It was a fact that Jiang Weiwei looked down on the weak. However, she respected the strong. When she saw Yun Jian's decisive killing earlier, her dissatisfaction and disgust toward Yun Jian had been replaced by admiration and respect. Should we retreat first? Jiang Weiwei turned to ask Yun Jian. Now that their whereabouts had been exposed, they could only retreat first and reconvene with Lu Shiyun and the rest to discuss the plan. Yun Jian merely narrowed her eyes and did not answer. Since she already knew about her brother's death and that the Flying Sky Gang had been involved, there was no way she would leave just like that. She wanted the Flying Sky Gang to pay the price in blood. Of course, at the same time, she had something important to ask the Flying Sky Gang. She had been looking for the organization behind the Wolverine gang that had abducted her brother. However, there had been no results. She could not rest until she avenged her brother's death. Not only was she going to destroy the Flying Sky Gang today, but she was also going to find out the identity of the organization behind them. Go and meet up with them first. Yun Jian put away the butterfly knife and turned to walk toward the stairs. Jiang Weiwei was stunned for a moment. Then, her body involuntarily followed Yun Jian's instructions and reported the situation to Lu Shiyun and the others. It was only after Yun Jian and Jiang Weiwei left that the gamblers dashed outside in a panic like they were fleeing. At this moment, in the conference room on the 5th floor of the building, the Flying Sky Gang didn't just have its own black faction building, it also had a meeting room where the elders and the upper echelons of the gang held meetings. At this moment, a bald man, who was sitting at the highest position in the conference room, was solemnly looking at the group of senior members of the Flying Sky Gang. This bald man had thick eyebrows and small eyes. He looked a little shifty-eyed. Although he looked like a street thug, the bald man was actually the boss of the Flying Sky Gang, Nick. Nick's solemn expression made the group of elders and high-ranking members of the Flying Sky Gang feel respect for him. This batch of firearms in our hands has attracted the attention of the police from various countries. Therefore, in the next few days, we must remain vigilant until our deal with the Iron Lock Gang is successful. Nick slammed the table and said with a serious frown. However, before he could finish, the door in front of him was kicked open. A young girl with long hair burst through the door. Then, a bright throwing knife flew over the heads of all the high-ranking members and stabbed into Nick's table. Chapter 250. The people in the conference room on the 5th floor didn't notice anything that happened in the casino on the 2nd floor. It had to be said that as the boss of the Flying Sky Gang, Nick had installed thick soundproof walls around the conference room. No matter how loud the commotion on the 2nd floor was, he couldn't hear anything in the conference room on the 5th floor. So just now, Yun Jian killed Miran and the others and caused a big commotion, but Nick and the others were still having a meeting. Therefore, when Yun Jian barged in and stabbed a flying dagger into the table in front of Nick while spouting her insolent words, everyone was terrified. Although Nick was frightened by Yun Jian's throwing knife, he was still someone who had seen a big scene. When he saw Yun Jian's appearance and age, he slammed the table and stood up for his prestige. He retorted to Yun Jian, "Who are you? How dare you barge into my Flying Sky Gang's conference room and spout nonsense about taking the lives of my Flying Sky Gang's higher-ups? Little girl, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't speak whatever you want. Young and frivolous, you can't do anything good. Today, you dare to offend my Flying Sky Gang, so you must pay the price." As the boss of the Flying Sky Gang, Nick saw that the person who came was a young girl in her teens. In addition, he was in front of his subordinates, so he had to put on a good show. That was why he slammed the table and stood up, shouting at Yun Jian. Hee hee. Facing Nick, Yun Jian didn't have the slightest fear, nor did she bother to retaliate with words. She looked at Nick, and the scene of her brother's head being thrown at her by Lang Sha in her previous life flashed before her eyes. Her brother was still so young, but he had become a stepping stone for these people. He didn't even have a complete corpse when he died. And all of this, the Flying Sky Gang led by Nick was also involved. Her cruel eyes flashed, and then she swung her hand, shooting blades in all directions. Several of the higher-ups closest to Yun Jian were instantly obliterated. This little girl really killed people. It wasn't a joke. The rest of the people, including Nick, were stunned. It was especially so for Nick, who had only just recalled that Yun Jian had flung the blade on the table in front of him in the beginning. Nick was so scared that he rolled off the podium. No. Let's talk this out. Nick was scared silly when he saw that Yun Jian had taken the lives of several higher-ups. Even if he was a fool, he could tell that Yun Jian was skilled, so he quickly begged for mercy. Little girl, I didn't recognize Mount Tai just now and offended you. Please don't hold it against me. Nick's attitude changed too quickly. At the same time, he revealed a strange yet friendly smile and looked at Yun Jian. Little sister, our Flying Sky Gang has no enmity with you, why are you making things difficult for us? Right? How about this, you can leave. We promise not to pursue this matter, okay? Yunjian narrowed her eyes at Nick's words. No enmity. Yunjian repeated Nick's words through gritted teeth. Do you know Slaying God, the #1 in the international secret agent ranking? Yunjian raised her brow and looked at Nick and the rest with a chuckle. Nick's eyelids twitched, but he managed to react in time. He gulped and asked, Why, answer me. Yunjian swung her arm and another flying knife pierced the neck of a higher-up. Another life was lost. The group of higher-ups had retreated to a corner. Everyone was trembling, afraid that they would be the next to die. This little girl was too scary. She took a life with just one move. I know, of course. Nick gulped, hastily replying, afraid that Yunjian would kill the higher-ups in his gang again. He had a bad feeling about this. Yunjian chuckled and looked at the group of people as if she was looking at dead people. She said without holding back, since you know Slaying God, the #1 on the secret agent ranking, I'm sure you're familiar with the incident where Slaying God's brother was used as a hostage to threaten her, right? I forgot that Flying Sky Gang was involved in this as well. Then, I think we're considered to have a blood feud now. As Yunjian spoke, she clasped her hands together and a cracking sound was heard from her knuckles. She was trying to hide her words. However, everyone present could tell what she was trying to say. Could this little girl in front of them be the famous #1 on the secret agent ranking, the most powerful secret agent king, Slaying God? After Nick heard Yunjian's words, he fell to the ground in shock. Slaying God, the #1 on the international secret agent ranking, the most powerful Kosha mercenaries boss. Chapter 251. What? Soar Club's higher-ups immediately understood what Yunjian meant. They stared at the long-haired girl standing in the middle with their mouths agape. Slaying God, the #1 secret agent in the international ranking, was her. In spite of it, Yunjian's skill with the flying dagger that slit their throats with a single stroke just now made everyone present believe it was unrealistic. If Yunjian was not the internationally renowned king of secret agents, Slaying God, how could she possess such dexterity? In an instant, everyone's faces changed beyond recognition. Everyone's hearts were subverted by an emotion called fear. However, no one was more fearful than Nick. Nick was the one who led Soar Club's higher-ups to kidnap Slaying God's brother and use him to threaten her. However, Nick was the mastermind. Slaying God was here now. She was here for revenge. Who was her match when she was so ruthless? Looking at the group of people who went from shock to bewilderment to fear, Yunjian merely curled her lips into a half-chuckle. However, Nick no longer had the guts to look at Yunjian when he heard her smile. Who did not know Slaying God's ability? Slaying God was the only secret agent who had left in Hun Group. At the same time, she was a demon-like existence. After Slaying God left in Hun Group, she went on missions like a maniac. Within 2 years, news spread that she had killed the previous boss of Kosha mercenaries, who was on par with an Hun Group. She was invincible as she took control of the Kosha mercenaries. Nick looked at Yunjian in fear. His legs gave out when he heard Yunjian's soft exclamation. He quickly got up and crawled toward Yunjian on his knees. No, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. I didn't want to be involved in that incident. We were forced to do it. Please let us go. Nick knelt in front of Yunjian with trembling legs. The man who was so bold and prideful earlier was now as cowardly as a piece of trash. This was the way of the world. In this world, the strong were respected. If you are weak, you must bow down to the strong. Nick was no exception. One must know that Slaying God, the #1 on the international secret agent ranking, was a king who had climbed out of a pile of dead bodies. The way the Hun organization trained their assassins and agents was brutal. Hundreds and thousands of children were captured and trained by the organization. In the end, only 3 survived. Slaying God was the most powerful of the 3 survivors. From this, it could be seen that the reason why Nick knelt before Yunjian on the spot after knowing what had happened was not because he was weak. He knew very well that if slaying God wanted to kill him, it would be no different from killing an ant. Oh. You didn't volunteer to participate. Yunjian raised her eyebrows and continued, "It's fine if I don't kill you. As long as you tell me which organization forced you to join, I can let you go." Hearing Yunjian's words, Nick immediately recalled. He was really afraid that Yunjian would go back on her words and kill them, so he immediately said, "It's the people from the Inferno Ring." The Inferno Ring was the 3rd largest assassin organization after the Inhun organization and the Kosha mercenaries. The Inferno Ring. Yunjian raised her eyebrows and hummed softly. A murderous intent flashed in her eyes as she lowered her head to look at Nick, who was kneeling before her. "Ha, then you can go to hell. You said you wouldn't kill me." Nick's eyes widened as he stepped back in fear. He did not expect Yunjian to go back on her words. "I did say that I'll let you go as long as you tell me which organization forced you to join. But didn't anyone tell you that you must die after knowing my identity?" Yunjian chuckled, her eyes bloodshot. Then, Yunjian flipped her palm and the butterfly knife nimbly appeared in her palm. The killing began. Chapter 252. Yunjian's eyes were bloodshot. She knew that these people were the ones who had caused her brother's tragic death, so she wanted to die a quick death. She, slaying God, had always been protective. Her brother's death had always been a knot in her heart. Therefore, the higher-ups of the Flying Sky Gang who had participated in her brother's matter must pay the price for their actions. In the hotel, Lu Shiyun and the rest were shocked and they heard what Jiang Weiwei, who had returned first, said. Jiang Weiwei told them about how they had exposed their whereabouts, including how Yunjian had killed Mi Luan and the rest. After the shock, Lu Shiyun, as the captain, was naturally the calmest. He frowned and said to everyone, "Since our whereabouts have been exposed, we must take other measures to seize that batch of firearms. No need." Just then, the door outside the room opened and Yunjian walked in. "Yunjian, little girl, where have you been? Why are you only back now?" "I was shocked when I saw that only Jiang Weiwei had returned. I was afraid that something had happened to you." Chu Ning was relieved when she saw Yunjian return. Jiang Weiwei did not explain why Yunjian did not return with her. Yunjian winked at Chu Ning discreetly, then looked at the rest and continued, "I've found that batch of firearms. We can go get it now." Naturally, Lu Shiyun and his men did not know that Yunjian had already wiped out the Go-Go Gang's higher-ups, including their boss. The usually quiet vice-captain, Hong Fan, could not help but ask Yunjian, "Are we going to get it now? There are thousands of people in the Flying Sky Gang, not to mention that their boss is no pushover. Even our commander, Gu Junjian, won't attack the Flying Sky Gang easily. Are we going to get it now? Are you sure it'll work?" Idiot Hong, since little sister Yunjian said that we can go get it, of course, there's a reason for it." Chu Xiangnan, who was standing next to Hong Fan, spoke up for Yunjian and even nudged Hong Fan with his elbow. Hong Fan was the most meticulous person in the group. At the same time, he loved to study and was very knowledgeable about technological products. However, he was a man of few words. Therefore, Chu Xiangnan gave him a nickname, Idiot Hong. Hong Fan glared at Chu Xiangnan. He pretended not to hear how Chu Xiangnan addressed him and turned to look at Yunjian. Hong Fan didn't have any other meaning. He was just used to deducing facts. He believed that it was impossible for the few of them to directly go to the Flying Heavens faction's territory to retrieve the firearms. Yun Jian lowered her eyes and said calmly, "The Flying Sky Gang's leader, Nick, and 18 other high-ranking members are dead. The remaining members of the Flying Sky Gang are no longer a threat, so we can go retrieve the firearms and report back to our country." What? The boss of the Flying Sky Gang is dead. All dead. A series of exclamations rang out. Everyone looked at Yun Jian in shock. The death of a gang's boss and the upper echelons meant that the gang had completely collapsed. Even if there were still people to replace them in the later stages, that was only the later stages. At least for now, it was absolutely easy for them to steal the firearms. Oh my God. They had just arrived for the mission. They hadn't even been here for half a day. And the result? The mission was almost completed. Even the official Advanced Special Forces soldiers had a hard time carrying out this mission, but they completed it in less than a day. Was this a dream? Just then, Lu Shiyun fell silent for a moment. He realized something and suddenly asked Yun Jian, the boss and high-ranking members of the Flying Sky Gang, "Were you the one who killed them?" There was a hint of shock in his voice. Chapter 253. Only God knew how shocked they were when Yun Jian nodded. Yun Jian was the latest to join the team and was also the youngest. In the cross-country run earlier, she might have gotten first place because of her developed motor nerves and good stamina. However, at this point, there was no longer anyone who did not believe it. When Jiang Weiwei came back, she told them in detail about how Yun Jian had killed Mi Luan and the rest. Now that Yun Jian had killed the Go-Go Gang's senior members, including the gang's boss, Nick, they would not doubt it. They were in disbelief. Shock and fear. How terrifying was Yun Jian's skill to be able to do that? Let's steal the firearms while the Go-Go Gang is in chaos. You guys know how to drive, right? I've checked it out just now. The firearms are all loaded in trucks, 4 in total. I can drive one, you guys can take the other 3, Yun Jian told them. Lu Shiyun answered quickly, "We can. Hong Fan, Fang Xiaoran, and I have all gotten our driver's licenses. It's no problem for us to drive the trucks." In the outside world, they all addressed each other by code names, but in this room, there was no need for that. What's more, the most dangerous people were already dead. Lu Shiyun did not ask why Yun Jian knew how to drive a truck as well. In fact, Yun Jian had become an omnipotent figure in their hearts. If it were not for her, it would be difficult for them to complete the mission, what more completing it in less than half a day. Before they departed, Lu Shiyun contacted Gu Junjian. Yun Jian then led them to steal the 4 trucks. There were no obstacles along the way. When they drove out, Gu Junjian, whom they had contacted earlier, had already sent someone to pick them up. They returned home that night. They only returned to Longmen City when it was almost evening the next day and saw Gu Junjian right away. Looking at Gu Junjian, whom they had just bid farewell to yesterday but met again today, a sense of pride rose within them. They had completed a mission that even the Advanced Special Forces found difficult to complete in less than half a day. They were back again. How could he not be proud? Although all this pride was given to her by Yun Jian. Hence, they were inwardly grateful to Yun Jian. The first thing Gu Junjian said when he saw everyone was, "Thank you for your hard work." Although the crowd did not see the change in Gu Junjian's expression, it was not difficult to see that Gu Junjian also had mixed feelings. He was right about Yun Jian. But then again, it wasn't strange for someone who could kill Wolf Blade, who was ranked 10th on the international assassin rankings, to have such abilities. Rest well for the next few days. I've already spoken to the school on your behalf, Gu Junjian continued. Also, after this mission is completed, the higher-ups will give you a reward. You will be informed when the time comes. After Gu Junjian finished speaking, he asked someone to drive Yunjian and the others home one by one. Just as Yunjian got home, she saw Qin Yiru, who did not go to work, packing a bunch of things. She even stuffed them into an old bag and was about to leave with it. "Mom, where are you going?" Yunjian asked. "Xiao Jian, you're back." Qin Yiru looked up at Yunjian tiredly and chuckled dryly. "Your dad has returned to Xinjiang town. I'm planning to go there with my documents to look for him and sign the divorce agreement to get a divorce." Yun Gang had returned to Xinjiang town. Yunjian frowned subtly. Yunjian did not even keep quiet as she told Qin Yiru, "Mom, I'll go with you." Yunjian was worried that Yun Gang and her aggressive grandmother in name, Lu Lanhua, would bully Qin Yiru if she did not go with Qin Yiru. Chapter 254. Qin Yiru did not refuse this time. After the previous incident, she no longer treated Yunjian as a child. Moreover, she was not confident about going back alone. After all, with her mother-in-law Lu Lanhua's shrewish personality, if they really got into a fight, it was unknown whether the divorce would go through. If Yunjian went back with her, it would give Qin Yiru a sense of security. "Okay." Qin Yiru nodded. "Then let's go take the bus now." "Okay," Yunjian agreed. She reached out to take Qin Yiru's bag. "Mom, let me take it." Qin Yiru was gratified and let Yunjian take the bag from her. Qin Yiru and Yunjian went to the bus station to board the bus back to Xinjiang town. It was the last bus in winter. Qin Yiru had planned to take the bus home today and then return to her parents' house to stay the night. She would visit her parents' house while she was at it. She would then go to Yungang's Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow morning to get a divorce. Qin Yiru had returned to Xinjiang town before the sky turned dark because she would only knock off in the evening. She did not plan to work overtime today, so she had applied for leave the next morning. Once she was done with the divorce, she would rush back to work immediately, so she only delayed her work by half a day. She planned to return to her parents' house to stay the night. Although Qin Yiru's parents' house was not good, it was still her parents' house. At the end of the day, she had to be filial to her mother because her mother was the one who raised her. No matter how disharmonious they were, she could not lose her filial piety. Qin Yiru and Yunjian only arrived at Xinjiang town when it was already dark. Qin Yiru carried a big bag of fruits back to her parents' house. When she opened the door to her parents' house, she looked around but did not see anyone. "It's probably because your grandmother and the rest aren't here," Qin Yiru mumbled softly to herself. Yunjian did not want to come here. After all, Zhang Meihua's family had treated Qin Yiru and her like that. However, according to Qin Yiru, she was still her mother no matter what. She still had to show her filial piety. At most, she would avoid contact with her in the future. Not long after she said that, a few people walked in. Zhang Meihua and the others came back from the market with a bunch of vegetables, fruits, fish, and meat. It was as if they were going to hold a big banquet. At that moment, they all had smiles on their faces. The cheerful smiles froze abruptly when they saw Yunjian and Qin Yiru. Fear flashed across their faces. Zhang Meihua, her face turned green when she saw Yunjian. Oh God, why was her terrifying granddaughter here again? The last time Yunjian threw a flying dagger at them, the scene where the dagger got stuck in the wall was still fresh in their minds. Zhang Meihua, in particular, had peed her pants on the spot. She still shuddered when she recalled it today. Why are you guys here? Zhang Meihua was terrified. She took a few steps back and looked at Yunjian with fear in her eyes. Qin Liqian followed behind Zhang Meihua and stared at Yunjian fearfully as well. He looked like he had seen a ferocious beast in the river. If others were to see this, they would probably snicker. After all, Zhang Meihua was Yunjian's grandmother and Qin Liqian was Yunjian's uncle. Both of them looked panicked and fearful when they saw Yunjian. It was truly shocking. "Mom, don't be scared. Xiao Jian and I came back today to visit you guys. I'm planning to file for divorce with Yun Gang tomorrow morning, so we'd like to stay here for the night. Also, here are some fruits. Xiao Jian and I picked them out from the fruit stall beside the bus stop. They're fresh, so we brought them for you guys to try." Qin Yiru placed the fruits on the table. Zhang Meihua had long felt Yunjian's threatening gaze. How would she dare to chase them away? The lesson from last time was unforgettable. "Okay, stay. Feel free to stay." Zhang Meihua took a few glances at Yunjian and gulped. Qin Yiru smiled when she heard that. This was her mother after all. Even if she did not like them, she did not wish for them to become enemies. "Right, Mom, you guys bought so many things. Are you treating us to dinner?" Qin Yiru asked with a glance at the things Zhang Meihua and Zhang Meihua had brought back. Zhang Meihua had calmed down and her attitude was not as harsh as before. Probably due to her fear of Yunjian, her tone was gentler. "It's Fang Fang who's coming back to visit her parents today. Her to s to look, she was to her to be, was to be two's. No, it's the same as the last time I saw you." Qin Yiru chuckled awkwardly, trying to ease the tension. "You have to take good care of yourself." Qin Fangfang consoled Qin Yiru. She then noticed Yunjian who was standing beside Qin Yiru. She took a few glances at Yunjian and exclaimed in surprise, "Aw, is this Xiao Jian? You've grown so big. Xiao Jian, this is your aunt. Quick, greet her." Qin Yiru nudged Yunjian with a smile. Yunjian had a good impression of Qin Fangfang when she saw how well she treated Qin Yiru. "Auntie," Yunjian called out. "Oh, good girl." Qin Fangfang beamed. "Oh my, what is this lousy place? It's so shabby. Fangfang, come over quick." A wealthy woman in her 50s or 60s alighted from the Santana. She was dressed in branded fur and her tone was indescribably smug. This person was Qin Fangfang's mother-in-law, Zhu Hengxiang. Chapter 256. Zhu Hengxiang was in her 50s or 60s but her skin was smooth and well-maintained, making her look like she was in her 30s or 40s. She did not look old at all. Judging from her appearance, Zhu Hengxiang also had a radiant face. She was also quite good-looking. It could be seen that when she was young, she must have been a great beauty. However, the words that came out of her mouth were not as pleasant. Qin Fangfang smiled awkwardly and ran back to help her mother-in-law. It was Zhu Hengxiang's first time in Xinjiang town. She had refused to come in the past but insisted on tagging along today. In addition, Zhu Hengxiang's overbearing manner was disagreeable. "Oh, my in-law, you're here. Xiao Wen is here too. Welcome, welcome." Zhang Meihua put on her signature smile and went up to her. Zhang Meihua had met Zhu Hengxiang before. She was the one who had gone out of the province to discuss Qin Fangfang and Sun Baiwen's wedding. "I can't afford to be in-law." Zhu Hengxiang did not give Zhang Meihua any face. After she finished speaking, she muttered a few more words. "Oh my, this place is so shabby. It's so shabby and small. I really don't know how to live here." Zhu Hengxiang grew up in a wealthy family and was a typical landowner's daughter. She had been living in the upper-middle-class society and had always looked down on those who lived at the bottom of society. Zhu Hingxiang quite liked Qin Fangfang as her daughter-in-law, but she had intervened when she heard about Qin Fangfang's family background. Her son, Sun Baiwen, had his heart set on Qin Fangfang and even said that he would marry no one else but her in this life. Zhu Hingxiang was afraid that her son would really not marry and the Sun family would have no descendants in the future, so she agreed to it reluctantly. Zhang Meihua and the rest heard Zhu Hingxiang's grumbling and smiled awkwardly. Sun Baiwen smiled as well. Sun Baiwen was different from Zhu Hingxiang. Although Zhu Hingxiang gave birth to Sun Baiwen, he looked gentle and polite. He was also a nice person and would not point out other people's shortcomings. Mother-in-law, we're here in Longmen City for something, so we thought we'd drop by to visit you. Fang Fang picked out quite a number of gifts and they're in the trunk. Let Brother Qian help me get them, said Sun Baiwen. All right. Here's the money, go and get it from little one. Go. Zhang Meihua couldn't stop smiling this time. She even patted Qin Liqian and urged him. Qin Yiru, who had been ignored, smiled awkwardly. Yun Jian, on the other hand, narrowed her eyes and remained silent. With Qin Yiru's help, a sumptuous dinner was quickly prepared. However, Zhu Hingxiang still said with disdain, "Is that all?" These words made Zhang Meihua feel awkward again. After all, this table of good wine and meat was something that they usually couldn't bear to eat. Right, Xiao Wen, is there anything you need this time in Longmen City? Zhang Meihua asked as she filled Sun Baiwen's third bowl of rice. After all, Qin Fangfang's family seldom came back, and Zhu Hingxiang was never willing to come here. Therefore, Zhang Meihua felt very strange. Yes, there is. Sun Baiwen smiled and scratched his head, continuing, didn't we hear that Longmen City is going to hold an auto show soon? I heard that it's the biggest one in the country. It's going to be an exhibition of hundreds and thousands of luxury cars. We probably won't see it even once in a few decades. Our family sells cars as well, so we followed the trend and came to take a look. Zhang Meihua knew that Sun Baiwen's family made a fortune selling cars as well. Are you serious? There's an auto show of this scale in Longmen City. How much money does it cost to hold a party like this? Qin Liqian shouted excitedly when he heard that. Longmen City Auto Show. Yun Jian's eyelid twitched when she heard the name. It seemed that Zhang Jifan had done his job of promoting it. Even people outside the province had heard about it. Chapter 257. In reality, Zhang Jifan had already reorganized the entire storefront. At the same time, he had reserved a huge space for the car exhibition. The car exhibition was set to be held 5 days later. As for the other related personnel and all the arrangements, Zhang Jifan had already made the necessary arrangements. Yun Jian was also relieved to hand new crews over to Zhang Jifan to manage. Obviously, Zhang Jifan did not disappoint. Of course it's true. There's a lot of publicity for the car exhibition this time. There will be hundreds to thousands of luxury cars. As long as you name a car, it'll be an eye-opener at the car exhibition. Sun Baiwen shouted excitedly. Zhang Meihua and the rest booed the moment Sun Baiwen said that. Zhu Hingxiang snickered when she saw that her son's words had caused an uproar among the crowd. Heh, what a bunch of ignorant people. The dinner was filled with men talking about men's affairs. The women chatted about women's daily life. Qin Yiru and Qin Fangfang had not seen each other for a long time. The two sisters were having a great time talking. Yun Jian, on the other hand, was stuffing her mouth with fish and meat without saying a word. Sigh. At this moment, Sun Baiwen sighed and said, it's a pity that the auto show this time requires an invitation. Not everyone can enter. Qin Fangfang felt sad when she heard Sun Baiwen's disappointed gaze. Don't be discouraged. There are still 5 days until the car exhibition. Let's go find out how to get the invitation. If there's really no other way, we can just take a look outside the car exhibition. Let's give it a try. Qin Fangfang turned to look at her husband, Sun Baiwen, and stopped talking to Qin Yiru. Sun Baiwen looked at his wife Qin Fangfang's comforting voice and instantly warmed up. Is this the invitation to the car exhibition? Qin Yiru thought about it for a few seconds. She suddenly grabbed her bag and took out about 10 cards with a high-end sports car printed on the front and New Cruise Auto Show invitation written on the back. Sun Baiwen unconsciously glanced at the cards in Qin Yiru's hand, and he stood up in surprise. A sense of astonishment filled his heart. Right. This is the invitation letter for New Cruise's auto show. But why do you have it? And you have at least a dozen invitations in your hands. New Cruise only sent out 1,000 invitations to the outside world, and those who were invited were all leaders of the business world, Long Shao. Even we didn't have the right to be invited. Sun Baiwen stared at the invitations that Qin Yiru had taken out in shock, stupefied. The auto exhibition organized by New Cruise this time only invited the rich or powerful bosses. Even those big bosses only had one invitation letter in their hands at most. There were already people in the market who were buying the invitation cards at high prices just to witness the splendor of the country's largest auto show. One invitation card could be sold at a sky-high price. However, the problem was that many big bosses refused to sell the invitation cards because they wanted to witness the show's splendor. Under such circumstances, it was shocking that Qin Yiru could take out more than 10 invitations at once. Everyone looked at Qin Yiru in shock. I was given these by the manager of New Cruise when I was working there. He said that I could ask my relatives and friends to take a look. I don't know what these are and I didn't plan to attend such an event. I was planning to throw them away in a few days. Qin Yiru was stunned as well. She did not expect the invitation cards in her hand to be so important. You work at New Cruise? Sun Baiwen asked in shock as if he had discovered a new continent. Yes, I'm just a cleaning lady. Qin Yiru was at a loss. Cleaning lady, you got more than 10 invitations. Sun Baiwen almost fainted from the shock. He had thought of many ways to get an invitation card before he came, but he could not do anything in the end. Chapter 258. Qin Yiru did not understand the question, but she nodded blankly. Yun Jian, who was sitting next to Qin Yiru, paused as she held a small cup of water. A faint smile spread across her lips. She took a sip of water and gulped it down. Qin Yiru's invitation was naturally given to her by the manager of New Cruise. At the same time, Yun Jian had also instructed Zhang Jifan to hire more cleaning ladies so that Qin Yiru's area would be divided into the smallest area. Now, Qin Yiru's daily work was more relaxed than those graduates from prestigious universities who came out to work in the office. Moreover, a monthly salary of 1,500 yuan was not considered low in 1998. That was why Qin Yiru was able to save money after deducting her monthly expenses. Why don't you guys take these invitations? I don't need them anyway. I won't attend that kind of event. Qin Yiru generously placed the invitations on the table and pushed them to Sun Baiwen. When Sun Baiwen's mother, Zhu Hingxiang, saw this, she quickly reached out to take them. However, Sun Baiwen reached out to stop her. We only need one. One invitation will allow our whole family to go in and watch the car show. Sun Baiwen only took one of the invitations and returned the rest to Qin Yiru in a friendly manner. He even thanked Qin Yiru politely. Thank you, sister. One invitation would allow their whole family to go in and watch the car show. As long as one person had one invitation, they could bring their family and friends to visit. There was no limit to the number of people they could bring. This was also an idea that Yunjian came up with. The cars she sold were targeted at the big bosses. Even if ordinary people went, they would not be able to afford them. This was not to say that Yunjian looked down on the poor, but it was a business concept. Of course, if the big bosses brought their family and friends to visit, it would be very different. Usually, the family and friends of the big bosses would not be too poor. Especially the friends of the big bosses, they would only become friends because they were in the same circle. Therefore, most of them had families that could afford cars. Therefore, if these people went, they would most likely spend money to buy cars in the future. After dinner, the sky was completely dark. However, Xinjiang town had street lights at night, so there was no need to worry about the dark. Qin Fangfang dragged Qin Yiru out for a walk. At night, Qin Fangfang requested to sleep with Qin Yiru. The two sisters had a lot of things to talk about since they were rarely together. Fortunately, there were plenty of rooms in Zhang Meihua's house, so she arranged one for Yunjian. Although Sun Baiwen couldn't hug his wife to sleep for the whole night, he could understand Qin Fangfang very well, so he agreed. The next morning, Yunjian returned to her first home since her rebirth with Qin Yiru. At the door, she also saw Yungang, her irresponsible father, whom she had met not long ago in the casino. Qin Yiru wanted to divorce Yungang, but Yungang refused. In the end, it was Yunjian's grandfather, Yunzhong, who felt that his son had ruined the family and forced him to sign the divorce agreement. It was only then that the matter was settled. The matter was finally settled. When the Civil Affairs Bureau was done with the last step, Qin Yiru took a few deep breaths. The weather today was similar to when she and Yungang registered their marriage. The sun was high up in the sky. Under the sunlight, there was a hint of warmth amidst the cold. To be honest, she had lived with Yungang for so many years. It would be a lie to say that she had no feelings for him. However, as time went by, Yungang committed more and more mistakes. Her patience had been worn out. Yunjian held Qin Yiru's hand. Holding her mother's rough hand, Qin Yiru made their way to the bus stop back to Longmen City. She swore that she would never let Qin Yiru suffer in the future. Chapter 259. After returning to Longmen City, Yunjian had a few more carefree days. Soon, it was the day of the auto show. In the morning, Yunjian was already awake when the sun was still rising. She had asked Zhang Xiaofeng and Chen Xini to watch the auto show together. Ling Yichen was also tagging along. Both Zhang Xiaofeng and Ling Yichen were boys, so it was only natural that they were fond of racing and machinery. Once they heard that Yunjian asked if they were interested in watching the auto show, they agreed without hesitation. When they found out that the auto show this time was the largest auto show in the country organized by new crews which had been in the limelight recently, Zhang Xiaofeng and Ling Yichen were dumbfounded. "Master, do you have an invitation for this place?" Standing at the entrance of the auto show, Zhang Xiaofeng glanced at Yunjian and asked with a twitch of his lips as he watched the guards checking the invitations. "No." Yunjian smiled breezily and led the way. "Oh, no." "Ha. No. How did we get in if we didn't?" "Hey, master, wait for us." Zhang Xiaofeng did not react for a moment before he caught up to Yunjian's light steps with Chen Xini, who had been giggling with a hand over her mouth, and Ling Yichen, who was glaring at him. When they reached the entrance where the invitations were checked, Yunjian and the rest were stopped. The guard did not recognize Yunjian and assumed that Yunjian and the rest were naughty kids and stopped them on the spot. His tone was not pleasant either. "This is an auto show, not a place for kids to play. Little girls and little boys, did you come to the wrong place? The guard thought that he was the one who was checking the invitations for the auto show, so he was feeling smug. He spoke to Yun Jian and the rest in a dignified and confident manner. Yun Jian did not have an invitation because she did not bring it with her and there was no need for it. Ignoring the gatekeeper, Yun Jian typed a message on her phone and sent it out. Not long after, a strong man rushed out of the door. The person in charge was one of Zhang Jifan's brothers. He had followed Zhang Jifan out of Xinjiang town. The person's surname was Wu. Steward Wu was in charge of maintaining order in the venue. Receiving Zhang Jifan's instruction that Sister Jian was here, he put down what he was doing and rushed out. Walking to Yun Jian, Steward Wu bent down to look at Yun Jian with a smile, addressing her respectfully in front of everyone. Sister Jian, you're here. Why didn't you come in directly? We've been waiting for you for a long time. When the gatekeeper saw that his superior had come, he was going to complain to Yun Jian and the other kids for not leaving. Unexpectedly, Steward Wu went to Yun Jian and addressed her as Sister Jian. Sister. Could it be that the girl he stopped had a higher status than Steward Wu? I was stopped, so I had to ask you to come out. Yun Jian gave a half-smile, her emotions unreadable. After that, she led the three of them into the auto show's entrance, who were still in shock with their mouths agape. Steward Wu stood rooted to the spot before he turned to scold the gatekeeper who stopped Yun Jian and the rest. Xiao Wang, you've *King caused trouble for me. If Sister Jian blames you, you'll have to bear the consequences. It was obvious that Steward Wu knew the gatekeeper named Xiao Wang. Steward Wu, can it be that serious? Xiao Wang was dumbfounded. He did not expect that he was the one who stopped the girl just now. Could it be that serious? Do you know who's organizing this auto show? Who do you think we relied on to get to where we are today? Steward Wu growled at Xiao Wang. Chapter 260. On the other side, Yun Jian, who had successfully entered the auto show, led Zhang Xiaofeng, Ling Yichen, and Chen Sini around. Master, I didn't expect the person in charge of this auto show to call you Sister Jian. Zhang Xiaofeng could not help grumbling. Yun Jian merely smiled without saying anything. The scale of this auto show was huge. Zhang Xiaofeng and the other two had been exclaiming since they entered the entrance. Oh my God! The world-famous cars that we used to only see in drawings can all be seen here. I think this must be the biggest auto show that's been held in our country so far. I really don't know who organized such a grand auto show. Ling Yichen cried out in surprise. These cars are secondary. There are 3 international limited edition supercars at the front hall. Do you guys want to go take a look? Yun Jian asked with a raised brow at the trio's ecstatic expressions. Wow, really? We're going. Zhang Xiaofeng shouted. With Yun Jian leading the way, the group went to the front hall. The 3 limited edition supercars at the front hall were actually the highlight of this auto show. They were the reason why both insiders and outsiders wanted to catch a glimpse of their splendor. There were only a handful of limited edition supercars in the world. As for the limited edition supercars, even some rich tycoons would find it hard to buy them. It was even more priceless in the market. Moreover, it was an auto show with 3 limited edition supercars as the highlight. How could it not attract the attention of the tycoons? The 3 limited edition supercars in the front hall were already surrounded by a crowd of onlookers. Everyone was looking at the 3 limited edition supercars with a sense of possessiveness. By the time Yun Jian and the others arrived, the place was already crowded. On the other hand, the 3 limited edition supercars were surrounded by a protective fence. The people around them only knew how to admire the cars. There was no commentator for the 3 limited edition supercars. First, it was because they were limited edition supercars. Most of the commentators would have a hard time describing the cars in a captivating manner. Secondly, it was because this was a supercar. The commentators themselves had never had the chance to touch it, so it was even harder for them to talk about it. Yun Jian saw many familiar faces in the crowd, including Mayor Gu, the mafia boss Su Zetian, and others who had been invited. She pursed her lips. Just as she was about to lead Zhang Xiaofeng and the other two over, she heard Qin Fangfang's voice. Xiao Jian, are you here for a visit too? Is your mother here? Qin Fangfang stopped Yun Jian when she saw her. When Yun Jian saw that it was her aunt, Qin Fangfang, and the others, she nodded and said, "My mom didn't come. She didn't go to work today. She said that today's event was too lively, so she didn't want to join in the fun." Hearing that her sister did not come, Qin Fangfang could not help but feel disappointed for a while. A sarcastic voice then rang. "Hey, Fangfang, this is your sister's daughter who gave your family an invitation to the auto show and is now working as a cleaner in New Cruise, right?" Yun Jian heard the sharp and malicious voice. Squinting her eyes, she saw a woman dressed to the nines standing beside Zhu Hingxiang. The woman was actually Zhu Hingxiang's biological daughter, Qin Fangfang's sister-in-law, Sun Baiyan. Beside Sun Baiyan was a man with a beer belly. It was Sun Baiyan's husband, Jiang Xingnan. When Qin Yiru gave Sun Baiwan an invitation, Zhu Hingxiang called her married daughter and son-in-law to come over immediately, saying that she wanted to watch the auto show. Sun Baiwan was helpless, but he could only go along with his mother. Sun Baiyan was exactly the same as her mother, Zhu Hingxiang. She had been pampered and spoiled since she was young and had always been high and mighty. Qin Fangfang frowned when she heard Sun Baiyan's unpleasant words. "Sun Baiyan, don't you spout nonsense in front of the child." Qin Fangfang could not help shouting. "I'm not spouting nonsense. Ha, her mother is a cleaner in New Cruise. It's the truth. Can't I talk about it? TSK, no matter how noble some people pretend to be, they can't change the fact that they came from a poor village." Chapter 261. When Qin Fangfang married Sun Baiwan, other than Sun Baiwan who treated her sincerely, she did not have a good relationship with her mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Fortunately, Sun Baiwan had always been on his wife's side. Therefore, Qin Fangfang tolerated as much as she could until now. In spite of it, her sister-in-law was getting out of hand, criticizing her sister in front of Xiao Jian. Qin Fangfang was enraged. Usually, Qin Fangfang could treat it as if nothing had happened when Sun Baiyan gossiped. But it was really inexcusable to talk about adult matters in front of a child. Moreover, when Qin Fangfang saw Sun Baiyan criticizing Qin Yiru in front of Yun Jian and in front of Yun Jian's friends, she was afraid that Yun Jian would be looked down upon by her friends. Because she was worried about Yun Jian, Qin Fangfang was truly angry with her sister-in-law for the first time. "Sun Baiyan, if you dare spout nonsense in front of the children again, I'll break your tongue," Qin Fangfang said, looking like she was really going to hit Sun Baiyan. Sun Baiyan was terrified when she saw that Qin Fangfang was truly enraged. She quickly hid behind Zhu Hingxiang and tugged at the corner of the latter's shirt, shouting, "Oh my, she's rebelling. Mom, your daughter-in-law is getting bolder. She's going to hit her sister-in-law." She sounded like she was telling the truth. Sun Baiyan's husband, Jiang Xingnan, stood like he was not there, not daring to say a word. Zhu Hingxiang was on her daughter's side, of course. When she saw how Qin Fangfang was behaving, she did not care that she was in public and acted like a shrew. She pointed at Qin Fangfang and said, "Great. You're rebelling. How dare you hit my Yan Yan? You." Just as Zhu Hingxiang was about to explode, Yun Jian shielded Qin Fangfang behind her and told Zhu Hingxiang and her friends, arguments aren't allowed during the auto show. If you make a ruckus again, get lost. Yun Jian's words made their eyelids twitch. Only Zhang Xiaofeng and his friends stood aside and watched. They knew that those who offended Yun Jian would not end well. Who do you think you are? Zhu Hingxiang shouted without thinking. Her shout was so loud that it attracted the attention of a group of big bosses who were watching the auto show. Are we supposed to leave just because you told us to? Zhu Hingxiang continued to curse Yun Jian loudly. Her words were getting worse and worse. Why don't you take a look at yourself? Don't act like you're the supervisor of an auto show. Aren't you just the daughter of a cleaning lady in New Cruise? Ha, look at your poor and pedantic appearance. What right do you have to tell us to scram? At this moment, Zhu Hingxiang seemed to have forgotten that the reason they were able to participate in the auto show was because of the disdainful, cleaning auntie that she had mentioned. Biting the hand that feeds you is nothing more than this. Mom, stop talking. You've gone too far. Sun Baiwen couldn't help but frown when he heard that. He stood up and said to Zhu Hingxiang. At that moment, a middle-aged man's voice cut through the air with a hint of anger and boldness. Because Yun Jian is the director of New Cruise and the founder of this auto show. Don't tell me she doesn't have the right to chase all of you away when you're not even invited to the auto show. Zhang Jifan, who had just witnessed the scene, stomped over angrily from afar. How dare she slander their sister Jian? This old hag must be tired of living. However, after hearing Zhang Jifan's words, the surrounding people all stared at the plainly dressed young lady with their tongues tied. Zhang Xiaofeng, Chen Xinyi, and Ling Yichen were dumbfounded. Qin Fangfang and Sun Baiwen were stunned. Zhu Hingxiang and Sun Baiyan, on the other hand, were ashen-faced when they heard that. What? New Cruise's director was Yun Jian. Chapter 262. Shock aside, Zhang Jifan was already standing in front of Yun Jian by the time the crowd recovered. Zhang Jifan, who was dressed in a suit and leather shoes, was completely different from the gangster who made a living by lending money to loan sharks. All these changes were bestowed upon him by Yun Jian. Zhang Jifan went to Yun Jian and bowed at Yun Jian, calling out, "Sister Jian." His greeting was an announcement to everyone present that she, Yun Jian, was the director of New Cruise. There was no one else. It was not an empty promise. The crowd snapped out of their shock. Ha ha ha. A deep chuckle was heard. What came into everyone's view was Mayor Gu's smiling face. Little girl, we meet again. I really didn't expect that you would be the one who organized the auto show this time. You're New Cruise's director. Mayor Gu exclaimed before he seemed to recall something and exclaimed, no wonder you bought a storefront that wasn't worth that much at the auction the last time with a whopping 14 million yuan. So, it's to start a company. Forget where Yun Jian's money came from. Her purchase of a storefront for more than 10 million yuan was the height of stupidity in other people's eyes. Even Mayor Gu could not wrap his head around it. Now, he knew. 10 million yuan aside, the storefront was definitely worth it if it was used well. Yun Jian used it to organize an auto show and publicize the company's name. Rich bosses would then come to buy cars. In this day and age, as long as the company's name was made known, even billionaires from other provinces would come here just to buy branded cars. What did some bosses use their money for? To buy branded cars and show off. Yun Jian had presented 3 limited edition sports cars in this auto show. Which car marketing company in the Z Nation could compare to this kind of capital? Limited edition supercars were hard to come by in the entire world, but Yun Jian had managed to get her hands on 3 of them. When the time came, she would be able to earn tens of millions by selling a luxury car. The money that she, Yunjian, had spent would be as good as flowing water. Moreover, the effect of her promotion of the company had already caused a huge commotion in the automobile industry of Z country. New Cruise would probably be the first choice for rich bosses to buy cars in the future. However, the people next to Mayor Gu were paying attention to the sentence. Yun Jian spent more than 14 million yuan to buy this store at the auction. More than 14 million. Heavens! Not to mention the 1998 era, even in the modern era, this was a huge sum of money that ordinary people might not be able to save in their entire lives. Even Qin Fangfang's husband's family, Sun Baiwen's family, which could be said to be a rich and famous family, only had a few million in assets. What about Yun Jian? Buying a storefront cost more than 10 million. This was the difference. Zhang Xiaofeng and the other two were stunned once again. Now, Zhang Xiaofeng's blood was boiling. Who would dare to say that his master was poor in the future? He would fight with his life on the line. Mayor Gu, we meet again. Yun Jian squinted and nodded at Mayor Gu. Not bad. This little girl has a bright future ahead of her. Mayor Gu squinted and laughed out loud. He could not help but compliment her. After Yun Jian and Mayor Gu nodded, she turned to look at the pale Zhu Hingxiang and said, "As you said, my mom works in my company. What's wrong with sweeping the floor? She's experiencing life." Unlike some people who look glamorous on the surface but are as shrewish as a shrew behind her back. Zhu Hingxiang had just mocked Yun Jian for being poor but learning how to do things from rich people. Now, Yun Jian was returning the same words to her. Chapter 263. It was Zhu Hingxiang's first time being reprimanded in public. Zhu Hingxiang was born in a prestigious family with superior conditions since she was young, and her husband was a match for her after she got married. She was a typical upper-class family. Zhu Hingxiang had never been scolded like that in her entire life. However, no matter how dumb she was, she would not go against Yun Jian. Yun Jian was the director of New Cruise. How would Zhu Hingxiang dare to retort with such a status? Ha! Yun Jian chuckled when she saw that Zhu Hingxiang dared not respond to her anymore. Then, Yun Jian pulled Qin Fangfang, who had yet to react to the situation, and warned Zhu Hingxiang and Sun Baiyan, who stood beside her. "If I find out that my aunt is bullied by you guys in the future, don't blame me for not reminding you. Let's see which manufacturer dares to continue working with your family's car dealership in the future." Yun Jian was blatantly threatening them. Without the cooperation of a manufacturer, there was only one outcome for a car dealership: bankruptcy. In spite of it, only she, Yun Jian, was capable of uttering such arrogant words. At the same time, Yun Jian's message was that she had the ability to make an established car dealership go bankrupt. Perhaps, if Yun Jian had said something like that before this, everyone would have treated it as a joke, thinking that she was young and frivolous. Now, however, an underage girl like her could organize such a grand auto show. The crowd thought that she was capable of doing what she said. Zhu Hingxiang paled. She had never thought that she would get herself into such a mess. She also did not expect Qin Fangfang's niece to be so capable after being looked down upon by her for so many years in poverty. She dared to bid for a storefront for more than 10 million yuan. Zhu Hingxiang knew very well that the Sun family's total assets were only a few million yuan. Compared to Yun Jian, it was nothing. "Xiao Jian, all right, that's enough." Qin Fangfang finally snapped back to reality and held Yun Jian, who stood up for her. After all, this was her mother-in-law. Even if her mother-in-law and sister-in-law were not on good terms, they still had to live together. Yun Jian stopped talking after hearing Qin Fangfang's words. Of course, she knew when to stop. She had already warned Zhu Hingxiang and Sun Baiyan. Unless they were idiots, they would not dare to do anything else. Yun Jian also knew that if she continued to speak, it would make things difficult for Qin Fangfang. Thus, they stopped talking about this topic. For the sake of Qin Fangfang and the fact that Zhu Hingxiang and Sun Baiyan didn't dare to speak since just now, Yun Jian didn't really drive them out. However, no one paid any attention to them. At this time, Yun Jian was already chatting happily with Mayor Gu, while Zhang Xiaofeng and the other two followed beside her. Yun Jian led Mayor Gu to the 3 limited edition sports cars and introduced them to Mayor Gu one by one. This is a Pagani Zonda. It's a tricolor sports car from Italy and there's only one in the world. It uses special LED lights on the front and back of the car. It's styled like an airplane's headlights. Yun Jian's fluent explanation stood out. Other than Mayor Gu, everyone who was standing in front of the sports cars to watch was captivated. If Yun Jian was the director of New Cruise, she would know the introduction of these limited edition sports cars despite her young age. Moreover, her explanation was extremely smooth. It was as if she knew these limited edition sports cars very well. Chapter 264. The auto show went on smoothly. After sending Qin Fangfang and her family off, the show came to a close. See you next time, girl. Mayor Gu said to Yun Jian when he left with Su Zetian. As he said that, Mayor Gu gestured to Yun Jian. Also, our government will support any promotional projects New Cruise has in the future. You can come to me if you run into any trouble. With Mayor Gu's assurance, Yun Jian smiled gratefully. Although she did not need help, it was good to have Mayor Gu's goodwill. After sending off everyone who came to watch the auto show, there were only the staff clearing the venue, Zhang Xiaofeng, Zhang Jifan, and Zhang Jifan left. Looking at Zhang Xiaofeng, Zhang Jifan, and Zhang Jifan who were holding back their questions, Yun Jian smiled and told them, if you're willing, you can work for Jifan in the future. Yun Jian was planning to let Zhang Xiaofeng, Zhang Jifan, and Zhang Jifan join her new cruise. Zhang Xiaofeng, Zhang Jifan, and Zhang Jifan came from rich families. They had lived a life of having everything taken care of and had never worked independently. Did Yun Jian mean that she wanted them to join New Cruise? This was no doubt a chance to break away from family and express themselves. We're willing, of course we're willing. All 3 of them shouted in unison. Yun Jian pressed her lips into a smile. After the auto show, all sorts of sports cars, regular sedans, and affordable sedans that New Cruise promoted went on the market. To everyone's surprise, New Cruise had sold 368 cars in less than 3 days of official car sales. This meant that they sold over 100 sedans on average in these few days. There were many expensive sports cars among them. Selling one of them would earn them millions of yuan. Of course, Longmen City's big bosses were not the only buyers. Some business tycoons who came because of their fame were there as well. New Cruise rose rapidly, earning a net profit of 30 million yuan in the month. The astounding sales made it the top car company in the country, let alone Longmen City's car marketing company. The company's reputation soared and swept the country. As the director of New Cruise, Yun Jian was sitting in the classroom, her fair and slender fingers twirling a black pen leisurely as she worked on a blank test paper on her desk. Yun Jian was in the first semester of her 3rd year in junior high school. She would face the first major exam of her life in half a semester, the senior high school entrance exams. Therefore, the school's teachers had increased their students' learning tasks, such as endless test papers every day. Yun Jian, while it was still all right, Zhang and Chen Sini, their heads were dizzy from the test paper. This weekend, Yun Jian was invited by Chu Ning and the others to celebrate the successful completion of their mission. Moreover, Gu Junjian had already applied for a reward for them from their superiors. Other than some monetary rewards, the 7 of them were directly promoted to official members of the Special Forces. It was no doubt a joyous event for Chu Ning and the rest. After some discussion, they decided to go on a trip this weekend to relax and change their moods. On Saturday morning, Yun Jian carried her school bag stuffed with a dozen hard-boiled eggs that Qin Yiru had prepared for her and went to meet up with Chu Ning and the rest. "Hey, Yun Jian, we're here." Chu Ning was the first to see Yun Jian and greeted her. Yun Jian went over. The group then boarded the train to a famous mountain. Chapter 265. The train arrived at a place called Jinglian Town. The famous mountain was called Weiwu Mountain. The mountain was very high above sea level, and the mountain path was rugged and steep. Jinglian Town was an ancient town attached to the foot of Weiwu Mountain. It was not without reason that this place was chosen as a place to travel. It was because Weiwu Mountain was high above sea level, steep and winding. It was very suitable for adventurous and exciting activities. There was a well-known fact about Weiwu Mountain. Throughout the year, there were many tourists who wanted to climb this mountain, but only 1 in 10 had the ability to reach the top. This rumor attracted a large number of mountain climbing enthusiasts. Especially when everyone wanted to be the only 1 out of 10 who could climb to the top of the mountain. However, many people returned without success. In fact, there was no one at the top, but according to those who had reached the top, tents could be set up on the mountain as long as they brought their own tents. Chu Ning and the rest alighted from the train. When they arrived at Jinglian Town, they were stunned by the towering Weiwu Mountain in front of them. Yun Jian merely squinted her eyes, but she raised a brow subtly when she saw Weiwu Mountain that was so tall that she could not even see its peak. "Wow, this is Weiwu Mountain. To be honest, I've wanted to climb this mountain for a long time. I heard that only 1 in 10 can climb to the top from the bottom of this mountain." Ha ha. Chu Xiangnan looked around the bottom of the mountain, his face agitated. "Then let's go. Let's see who can run faster." Chu Ning rubbed her hands excitedly and was about to run ahead. "Everyone. Wait." The early morning sun shone on Yun Jian. It was very dazzling. Just as Yun Jian and the rest were about to go up the mountain, a voice came from behind them. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and turned sideways. She saw a few young men and women in their 20s standing behind them. This group of people was also carrying a travel bag. It seemed that they were also here to climb Weiwu Mountain. The person who just spoke was the sunny man standing at the front with a smile on his face. "Hello, I'm Qin Yan. These are my classmates. May I ask if you are planning to go up the mountain too?" The man with a bright smile introduced in a friendly manner and asked. "Yes." Yun Jian stood at the back of the group, but also at the front of Qin Yan. She nodded and said, "Ah, that's great. Can we go up the mountain together? It's like this, we are university students. This time, we are a group to go up the Weiwu Mountain. However, we are unfamiliar with the place, so we want to find someone to go up the mountain together," Qin Yan said. The sunlight bathed Qin Yan's face. This Qin Yan was still a very eye-catching handsome guy. "Sure." Chu Ning, who was walking at the front, saw Qin Yan's handsome face. She ran back as if she was mesmerized. She looked at Qin Yan with a smile and extended her hand to introduce herself. "I'm Chu Ning. Let's go together." That's great." Qin Yan breathed in relief, but his gaze was on Yun Jian, who had her hands in her pockets. One had to admit that Yun Jian was very eye-catching. "Brother Yan, why are we looking for them?" I don't agree." At this moment, a pretty girl with two ponytails standing behind Qin Yan spoke up. The girl was about 19 or 20 years old. She seemed to have noticed Qin Yan's gaze on Yunjian. Her angry face wrinkled even more. Chapter 266. Yeah, Qin Yan, I think little sister Xiao Feng is right. Why should we form a group? It's better for us to go our own ways. Look at them. They're as thin as a piece of paper. They probably won't even make it halfway up the mountain. We can't let unimportant people drag down our own progress. Standing next to the girl called Little Sister Xiao Feng, a man with a large build and weighing 150 pounds spoke to Qin Yan. There was no trace of politeness in his tone. The aggressive girl just now was called Wang Fengfeng. She was the prettiest girl in their university's finance and accounting department. The large man who spoke up for her was her suitor, Wu Hang. Wang Fengfeng and Wu Hang's tone was full of confidence. In fact, the group of university students led by Qin Yan to climb Weiwu Mountain had all learned martial arts. At the same time, they were also members of the university's Taekwondo club. They had also participated in Taekwondo, Wushu, and wrestling competitions many times. They had defeated many of their peers and won many championship titles. Therefore, the tone of his voice was full of arrogance, and there was a hint of pride in it. Wang Fengfeng, on the other hand, favored Qin Yan. She was infuriated when she saw him staring at Yunjian like that. In addition, Yunjian's group of 7 did indeed look thin and weak. Because of the intensive training in the military training camp, even Chu Ning, who originally had a little baby fat and a small belly, had lost a lot of weight. The current appearance of the 7 of them was symmetrical, thin and weak. Therefore, Wang Fengfeng and Wu Hang seized the opportunity to say that they were weak. Do you think we want to go with you? Humph. We'll go our own way. Who would feel good after hearing that? Chu Xiangnan was the first to shout back. Then, he turned around and left. Chu Ning heard Qin Yan's classmates, Wang Fengfeng and Wu Hang, and suddenly felt a little awkward. It seems like your classmates don't welcome us. Then, let's part ways here. Compared to the emotional ups and downs of the few people, Yunjian was extremely calm. She said to Qin Yan indifferently, then turned around and walked to the bottom of Weiwu Mountain. She had never been a person who looked for trouble. Seeing that Yunjian had made her stand, the others followed suit. Chu Ning, who was standing beside Qin Yan, couldn't help but take a few more glances at him. In the end, she had no choice but to say goodbye and chase after Yunjian and the others. The morning light shone on the girl who was walking towards the top of the mountain step by step, covering Yunjian with a thin layer of light. Qin Yan was stunned the moment he saw this naturally noble and inviolable figure. At this time, he stared at Yunjian for a long time, unable to move his eyes away. Brother Yan. Brother Yan. Brother Yan. Wang Fengfeng waved her hand in front of Qin Yan's face several times before he retracted his gaze. Wang Fengfeng was even more annoyed. Why was that girl so annoying? Yunjian and the others had already climbed up the mountain along the cement path. They could also feel that the mountain road was getting steeper and steeper, and their strides were getting more and more strenuous. Along the way, Yunjian and the rest stopped for quite some time. They had a lot of snacks in their bags, so they stopped every now and then or drank a few sips of water. Save! Save me! Save my son, save him! At this time, a woman's scream came from the mountainside where Yunjian and the others were. Yunjian and the others looked at each other, packed up their bags and walked back. After going down a few steep slopes, they saw a woman standing at the edge of the cliff and looking down. The woman's face was pale with fright, and she was so scared that her voice was almost muffled. Yun Jian walked over to take a look and saw that at the bottom of the steep cliff, a 7 or 8-year-old boy was hanging from a tree that grew on the edge of the cliff. The boy was hanging in the air, and his shirt was dangling from the tree, swaying back and forth. If the boy's shirt were to let go of the tree branch, what would face him would be a bottomless abyss, a cliff that couldn't be seen at all. Ah! There's a child hanging from a tree. Below is a cliff. Yun Jian and the others had just walked to the edge of the cliff when they saw a group of people coming down the slope. Wang Fengfeng, who was walking in front, pointed at the bottom of the cliff and screamed in fear. Chapter 267. Chen Yan caught a glimpse of Yun Jian who was coming back. Without any makeup, Yun Jian's jade-like skin was glossy and delicate. She had a natural beauty. She pursed her lips into a slight smile. Her upturned lips carried a kind of suffocating and mesmerizing charm that was eye-catching. Chen Yan thought, this is love at first sight. Chen Yan wanted to go with Yun Jian at first, so he didn't ask the other members of his group. He just wanted to get to know Yun Jian. And now, perhaps he wanted to play the hero in front of Yun Jian. Chen Yan took off his black coat and handed it to Wang Fengfeng. Take it. Then Chen Yan walked towards the little boy who was hanging on the branch of the cliff. The little boy's mother was crying and shouting for help. It wasn't hard to see that the little boy accidentally stepped on the flat ground just now because she wasn't paying attention. The little boy's small and thin body directly slipped over the iron fence. If it weren't for the rows of branches growing on the edge of the cliff, which the locals cultivated to prevent people from falling off the cliff, the little boy would probably have fallen off the cliff and been smashed to pieces. Brother Yan, don't. Chen Yan wanted to save the little boy, but Wang Fengfeng pulled his sleeve. This cliff is so high. And it's so steep. What if something happens to you? Wang Fengfeng's worried eyes looked at Chen Yan, her eyes filled with fear. Then Wang Fengfeng looked at the little boy's mother who was standing on the edge of the cliff and desperately begging for help with disgust and added, she didn't take care of her child. Why should she beg others to save her child? I think this woman deserves it. Chen Yan was stopped by Wang Fengfeng for a moment and he hesitated. Indeed, he just wanted to show off in front of Yun Jian, but the little boy was hanging on the branch of the cliff. There were no tools to save him here. If he went to save him, what if he fell down instead? Thinking of this, Chen Yan's handsome face showed an inexplicable look of fear. Yun Jian saw all these expressions. She just smiled contemptuously. Then, she took off her backpack and slid it to the ground. Her fair and slender fingers pulled the zipper of the backpack and she quickly took something out of it. Flying claw. Yun Jian, you actually remembered to bring this? Chu Ning was still worried about the little boy who was dangling from the cliff and was about to fall when she saw Yun Jian take out a flying claw. She cried out in surprise. Military flying claw. With this thing, as long as it was fixed properly and he grabbed the rope, he could hang down to save the little boy. Yes. Yun Jian nodded. She swung her flying claw and it caught a firm spot on the edge of the cliff. Then, she jumped off the cliff. When Chen Yan and the others saw this scene, their eyelids twitched tightly. When they came back to their senses, they were all shocked, especially when they saw Yun Jian take out the flying claws. Who were they? Why would they bring a flying claw, a weapon that belonged to the special forces, when they were traveling? Just as they thought of this, Chen Yan and the others were stunned. They saw Yun Jian move in a perfect arc. She used the flying claw and leaned towards the little boy. Then, she reached out and picked up the little boy. At the moment when everyone's hearts skipped a beat, she retracted the flying claw in her hand and stomped on a protruding cliff point. Then, she jumped up nimbly. When they looked again, Yun Jian had already rescued the little boy. Meanwhile, Chen Yan and the others were dumbfounded. How was it that Yun Jian, who looked so thin and frail, was so agile and swift? This didn't make sense. Especially Wang Fengfeng and Wu Hang, who had said bad things about Yun Jian and the others. At this moment, there was no trace of redness on their faces. When Yun Jian rescued the little boy and placed him on the ground, she saw the little boy's face clearly. The little boy was very delicate and pretty. His skin was smooth and lustrous, and his cheeks were rosy. It was as if he didn't realize that he had just experienced a life-and-death situation. Yun Jian was dumbfounded. Under everyone's gaze, her beautiful pupils contracted. She stared at the little boy for a moment, her emotions changing rapidly. Chapter 268. Yun Jian sized up the little boy. Looking at the little boy's face that was identical to her little brother's, she couldn't help but think of her little brother's lively smile when she first saw him in her previous life. She also remembered the dried tear stains at the corner of her little brother's eyes when he died tragically. Little Zhu. Yun Jian reached out her hand. Although she had always been strong, her voice was trembling when she spoke. Her little brother's name was Yun Zhu. She still remembered the first time her little brother had seen her in her previous life. He had used his big black eyes to stare at her, his face was rosy, his lips were white, and his words were clear. He had blinked at her and said, "Are you my big sister?" Then, he happily grabbed her big hand with his short and cold little fingers. He was overjoyed. "That's great. Little Zhu has a big sister too. Little Zhu has a family too." Yun Jian and Yun Zhu's biological parents died in a car accident when Yun Zhu was 4 years old. The reason was that Yun Jian was kidnapped by the organization when she was very young. Her biological parents searched for her for more than 10 years. In the end, both of them died in a car accident during the search. Yun Zhu grew up in an orphanage. All these years, Yun Jian was trained as an agent in the Enhan organization. When Yun Jian had the ability to find her family before she was kidnapped, she only had her little brother left. Later, her little brother was used to threaten her and died tragically. Yun Jian's heart was not made of steel. She could be angry and hate this kind of world. The little boy in front of her was frightened by Yun Jian's sudden outstretched hand. He shrank back. Zhu. At this time, the little boy's mother rushed over with tears in her eyes. She hugged the little boy tightly. The fear in her heart could not be described by the word fear. "Mom, this big sister seems to know my name." The little boy pointed at Yun Jian and said innocently to the woman. However, his eyes were dull. "Yes, Yun Jian, what's wrong with you?" Everyone was surprised by Yun Jian's actions. Chu Ning could not help but be the first to ask. So this little boy was also called Yun Zhu. He was the same as her little brother. "I'm fine." Yun Jian closed her eyes and wore a half-pressed smile. Regardless of whether this little boy was her younger brother or not, since he had the same face as her younger brother and even had the same name as her younger brother, this gave her some hope. Perhaps her younger brother was still alive, in another way. "Little girl, thank you. Thank you for saving my son. Thank you." After Yunju's mother settled her child down, she walked over to Yun Jian to thank her. She was so sincere that she almost knelt down to thank Yun Jian. In the end, she was stopped by Yun Jian. At this moment, Chen Yan and the others who were standing at the side were very embarrassed. In the beginning, this group of people all thought that Yun Jian and the others were cowards, so they were very straightforward with their words. But what was the result? A 15 or 16-year-old girl had single-handedly rescued a little boy who was hanging on the edge of a cliff. By this time, Yunjian had already met Yunju's mother. Yunju's mother was called Yun Hailan. She was a single mother, and Yunju took her surname. This time, she came to Weiwu Mountain for her child, Duan Lian. According to Yun Hailan's mother, Yunju had changed completely after he fell seriously ill a few months ago. His eyes became dull, and he did not like to talk. Sometimes, he would even scream in his nightmares, "No, don't kill me. Sob, 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 please don't kill me." Usually, he became very timid. At the age of 8, he did not even dare to go to the toilet alone in the middle of the night. Yun Hailan came to Weiwu Mountain because of Duan Lian and Yunju's courage, but she did not expect something like this to happen. She did not expect that Yunju would fall down the cliff just because she was not paying attention. When Yunjian heard Yun Hailan's words, she froze on the spot. A few months ago, wasn't that when she was reborn? Chapter 269. Could it be that her brother was reborn? Yunjian suppressed the excitement in her heart. However, she knew one thing. Even if the little boy in front of her was her brother, he did not remember her. However, Yunjian knew that her brother had been traumatized in his previous life. He was only 7 or 8 years old, but his head had been cut off. When he died, there were still traces of tears on his tender cheeks. "Mom, let's go home." At this moment, Yunju stretched out his hands to Yun Hailan. His face was still expressionless as he said those words in a daze. Okay. Let's go home." Yun Hailan reached out and carried Yunju. Then, she apologized to Yunjian. "Zhu wanted to go home, so I brought him home first. I didn't expect something like this to happen today. I won't bring him to such a dangerous place in the future. By the way, my house is nearby. If it's convenient, you can stay at my house for a few nights. This Weiwu Mountain is not easy to climb. Most people will come down not long after going up the mountain. The closer the mountain is to the top, the steeper the slope. Moreover, it could be life-threatening at any time. Therefore, most people would not risk their lives to climb up the mountain." "Okay." Yunjian nodded. Her eyes were fixed on Yunju. Then, she made a decision. "I'm not going up the mountain. It seems that I'll have to trouble you for a few nights." She had to figure out what happened to her brother. "What?" "Yunjian, you're not going up the mountain." Chu Xiangnan was completely unaware of the situation. He shouted in surprise. "Yes, I'm not going." In fact, whether or not she climbed the mountain did not matter much to Yunjian. Therefore, she nodded and replied to Chu Xiangnan. "You guys go ahead," Yunjian said to Chu Xiangnan, Chu Ning, and the others. Then, she went down the mountain with Yun Hailan. Chen Yan watched Yunjian go down the mountain. He wanted to say something, but in the end, he went up the mountain with Wang Fengfeng and the others. Meanwhile, Yunjian followed them to Yun Hailan's house alone. Yun Hailan's house was very shabby. She was a single mother, but her family was much more shabby than Yun Gang's. The few rooms here were made up of temporary wooden planks, barely enough for people to live in. "You live here?" Yunjian frowned slightly. "Well, I hope you don't mind." Yun Hailan smiled at Yunjian, with a hint of apology in her smile. "I won't." Yunjian followed Yun Hailan into the house made of wooden planks. As she walked into the house, she could even feel the cold winter wind passing through the thin wooden planks and blowing at the people in the house. "Sorry, my house is a little shabby." "You can sit anywhere," Yun Hailan said to Yunjian. Yunjian did not stand on ceremony. She sat down directly. While Yun Jian sat down and chatted with Yun Ju, Yun Hailan took the opportunity to start working. Because Yun Hailan's family was poor, she could only rely on handicrafts to make a living. "Mom, I'm cold." At this moment, Yun Ju, who was wearing thin clothes, curled up and shouted. Yun Hailan gritted her teeth and said to Yun Ju, "Be good, Ju. I'll buy you a cotton-padded coat when I get my salary in a few days." Yun Hailan's family was so poor that they could barely afford food and clothing. The residents of Jinglian town generally lived in poor conditions. Yun Hailan had no work experience, and now she had to raise her child, so she was even more destitute. She did not even have the money to go to the hospital when Yunju's behavior became strange in recent months. When Yun Jian heard this, she took off her thick down jacket and put it on Yunju. This is not right." Yun Hailan saw this and reached out to refuse. "The child is still growing. He needs warmth," Yun Jian explained. Yun Hailan was silent for a few seconds. She looked at Yun Jian gratefully and said with tears in her eyes, "Thank you." Chapter 270. When Yun Hailan heard the banging outside the door, she pricked her fingertip with the needle she was holding in her panic. She did not care about the blood that was slowly flowing out of her fingertip as she hurried over to push Yun Jian away. "Young lady, go hide in the house first. Go now." Yun Hailan pushed Yun Jian into the house. Yun Jian frowned and shook her head. The group of people outside obviously came with ill intentions. How could she leave Yun Hailan to hide? "Zhu, bring your sister inside to play," Yun Hailan said to Yun Zhu, who was sitting on a stool when she could not persuade Yun Jian. Yun Zhu was not a talkative person, but he was still very obedient to his mother. Yun Zhu went over to hold Yun Jian's hand and led her into the house. Yun Jian followed Yun Zhu into the house because she saw Yun Hailan telling her softly, "I'm fine. Young lady, look after Zhu, for me." After Yun Jian and Yun Zhu hid in the house, Yun Hailan turned to open the door. Creak, the thin door panel was opened. Yun Jian could still see the scene through the crack of the door from the other room. Standing outside the door was a tall and burly man with thick arms and a bulging beer belly. Jinglian town was not a peaceful town because the residents here were different from Longmen City. The living environment here was a few levels worse than Longmen City, so there was more social unrest here. The residents here would be forcefully collected protection fees. It was not unusual to see such incidents. Even the police could not do anything about these people who collected protection fees. Because these people were all gangsters, all of them wielded knives and guns. Most importantly, these people had someone backing them up, so even the police could not do anything about them. There was a group of people standing behind the man, each of them holding something like metal rods in their hands. It was obvious that they were not good people. At this time, the tall man in the lead shook his fat body and stretched out a fat hand. He was holding a blade of grass in his mouth. He looked at Yun Hailan arrogantly. Where's the money?" Yun Hailan looked a little scared, but she forced herself to look at them normally. "Brother Nyo, our family is tight on money recently. Can you give me a few more days? After I finish this batch of work, I'll give you the money as soon as I get paid. What do you think?" Yun Hailan pleaded. She really had no money. If she had some extra money on hand, she wouldn't have refused to take her child to the hospital when he was so emotionally unstable. Mothif *Ker, who the F***ck are you trying to fool? The other families have already paid the protection fees, and you're the only one who's still dawdling. Brothers, let's go. Don't talk nonsense with this woman. Let's smash her house and see if she can pay for it. The man called Brother Nyo waved an iron rod and was about to hit Yun Hailan's thin body. Yun Hai-lan was already prepared to take a beating. Brother Nyo's group was unreasonable. Because they were gangsters, they usually stirred up trouble and had a powerful background. Even the police couldn't do anything to them. It was common for Yun Hai-lan to be beaten. Of course, before she was beaten, she would lock Yun Ju in the room so that the child wouldn't see it. She asked Yun Jian to hide as well because Yun Jian was pretty. Brother Nyo's group was not only greedy, but they would also forcefully occupy beautiful women when they saw them. Many innocent girls in town had been defiled by this group of people. She was indebted to Yun Jian. Of course, she couldn't watch Yun Jian be bullied, so she asked them to hide and keep quiet. Just as the iron rod was about to hit Yun Hai-lan, a pair of fair and clean hands suddenly grabbed the iron rod. In the blink of an eye, Yun Jian had already dashed out of the house next door. When Brother Nyo and his group saw Yun Jian, their eyes lit up. What a beautiful woman! Chapter 271. Yun Jian's appearance stunned Brother Nyo and the others, but at the same time, they also looked at her with lustful eyes. Yo, Yun Hai-lan, when did you hide such a beautiful girl in your house? Brother Nyo's tone immediately softened, and his tone was not as tough as before. Why did you come out? Go quickly, this has nothing to do with you. Yun Hai-lan was shocked to see Yun Jian come out, and she quickly pushed Yun Jian out of the house. Yun Hai-lan actually just wanted to protect Yun Jian. You're here and you want to leave. Ha! Brother Nyo and the others blocked the door, and stared at Yun Jian with evil eyes. Yun Hai-lan, how about this, let this little girl accompany us, and we'll waive this month's protection fee. What do you think? Brother Nyo rubbed his chin and looked at Yun Jian, and said to her with an evil smile, as if Yun Hai-lan had gotten a great bargain. Dream on. Yun Hai-lan gritted her teeth, and she suddenly summoned her courage to shout at Brother Nyo and the others. Yun Jian was her benefactor, and Yun Hai-lan did not expect that Brother Nyo and the others would come to collect protection fee at this time, and she also did not expect that Yun Jian would not listen to her and come out to stand up for her. Naturally, she would not let Yun Jian fall into the hands of evil people. Madhav *Ker, when did you get so bold? Ha! I'm giving you a chance today because of you. I won't collect this month's protection fee from your family, and your *King refusing a toast only to drink a forfeit. Brother Nyo said, and then he angrily smashed the iron rod on the door. Hearing Brother Nyo's words, Yun Jian laughed. Do you know the consequences of messing with the lion's head? Yun Jian raised her eyebrows. She suddenly curled her lips and looked at Brother Nyo and the others with disdain. Yo, little beauty, I can't guess such a deep mystery, but I know you're going to be mine soon. Brother Nyo narrowed his eyes and stared at Yun Jian. As he spoke, he even reached out his hand and wanted to pounce on Yun Jian. Brother Nyo immediately rushed towards Yun Jian, but before he could reach her, he was stopped by Yun Hai-lan. Yun Hai-lan's frail body blocked Brother Nyo and the others. She shouted desperately at Yun Jian, take Shu, and run. Jump out of the back window. Don't look back. Go. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. Run. This word had never appeared in Yun Jian's dictionary. Just as Yun Jian was about to kick Brother Nyo and his men away, Yun Ju's voice was heard in the house. Mom. Yun Ju had stood outside the house unknowingly. He saw the scene in front of him and cried out involuntarily. Especially when he saw his mother desperately blocking Brother Nyo and his men with her body, not allowing them to come over. Brother Nyo and his men were even holding various weapons such as knives and iron rods. A horrifying image suddenly appeared in Yun Ju's mind. Ah, knives, killing people. No, don't kill me. Yun Ju suddenly hugged his head as if he had recalled something. He squatted down in pain. Xiaozhu. Yunjian's attention was attracted by Yunju's actions. She stopped kicking Brother Niu and his men and walked anxiously towards Yunju. Xiaozhu, what's wrong? Yunjian would only lose control when her brother was in danger. Yunjian squatted down to check on Yunju's condition. On the other side, Brother Niu, who was blocked by Yun Hailan at the door, suddenly rolled his eyes. He pulled out a dagger in disgust and stabbed Yun Hailan's abdomen. Ah! It was not until Yun Hailan screamed in pain that Yunjian came back to her senses. Brother Niu twisted the knife in Yun Hailan's abdomen a few times and then pushed Yun Hailan to the ground. Damn it! Yunjian's eyes turned fierce and her pupils suddenly changed color. She was so worried about Yunju that she forgot about Yun Hailan. She did not expect Brother Niu to really stab Yun Hailan. When Yunju saw this scene and recalled the past in his mind, he was in great pain. Yunjian stood up from Yunju's side. Her cruel eyes were filled with burning anger. She was really angry. Chapter 272. At first, Brother Niu and the others didn't see Yunjian as a threat at all. After all, in their eyes, how old was Yunjian? No matter how powerful she was just a little girl. Where could she go? But the moment Yunjian took out the butterfly knife, Brother Niu and the others' eyelids twitched. F***ck, are you for real? The little beauty is hiding a weapon on her. Brother Niu screamed. But even if you have a weapon on you, do you think you can beat us? Pfft. Brother Niu looked at Yunjian with contempt as she walked towards them with the butterfly knife. Just as he sneered, Yunjian had already made her move. The butterfly knife in her hand moved nimbly between her fingers and then stabbed into Brother Niu's abdomen at a strange angle. Brother Niu's eyes widened. He didn't even have the chance to react before he was stabbed in the abdomen by this seemingly harmless girl in front of him. You. Brother Niu shouted desperately. You're not human. You're not human. How was it possible for a little girl to be able to display such quick skills? But Brother Niu couldn't finish his words. The moment Yunjian withdrew the knife, Brother Niu fainted completely. With a bang, he fell to the ground and stopped breathing in the next second. Dead. Dead. Brother Niu is dead. Seeing that Brother Niu was killed by Yunjian with such terrifying skills, Brother Niu's group of brothers became restless. Then they all ran away faster than anyone else. No one cared about Brother Niu's life or death. This little girl could kill. She could kill. Seeing this group of people run away, Yunjian didn't chase after them. After all, the person who stabbed Yun Hailan was Brother Niu. And now, Brother Niu was dead. Yunjian walked over to check on Yun Hailan, who was stabbed on the ground by Brother Niu. She touched Yun Hailan's nose with her finger and calmed down. Fortunately, Yun Hailan wasn't dead. Then Yunjian pressed around Yun Hailan's wound and found that the wound wasn't deep. But if it dragged on for a long time, even if the wound wasn't deep, the person would bleed to death. The equipment here wasn't complete. She could help Yun Hailan remove the knife, but without the proper equipment, the wound could easily get infected. Therefore, Yunjian took out the hemostatic medicine that she had bought after her rebirth and used it to stop Yun Hailan's bleeding. Then, Yunjian ran out to stop a car. She was unfamiliar with this place and didn't even know where the nearest hospital was. Furthermore, Yun Hailan's wound wasn't suitable for her to carry her to the hospital. Fortunately, Yunjian quickly stopped a kind-hearted Audi sports car at the entrance. The driver was a middle-aged man. When he heard that someone was injured, he hurriedly helped Yunjian carry Yun Hailan into the car and send her to the hospital. Yunjian held Yunju's hand and went to the nearest town hospital together. Yunju did not say a word along the way, but his dull eyes had become much clearer. Yun Jian didn't stop until Yun Hailan was sent to the hospital's operating room. She knew that with Yun Hailan's current injury, the hospital's medical skills could save her. It was the first time that the middle-aged man had seen a girl like Yun Jian who could remain calm in such a terrible situation, so he stayed with her until Yun Hailan's life was no longer in danger. Yun Jian thanked him and personally saw him off. Yun Hailan hadn't woken up after the operation, but she had been moved to the ward. After finishing the formalities, Yun Jian took Yunju's little hand and walked to the ward. "Sister." Yunju, who had been silent all this time, suddenly called out. At this moment, walking in the deserted corridor of the hospital, Yun Jian's hand holding Yunju's hand suddenly paused. Yunju's next words almost made her, who had always been stubborn, cry. "You're my sister, right? I know you're my sister." Chapter 273. Yunju's rosy cheeks were adorable. There was a hint of maturity in his tender face. He looked very much like Qin Ji, but it was not difficult to tell that he was a young boy with regular features. When he grew up, he would definitely be a charming man. They were blood relatives in their previous lives. Even though Yun Jian and Yunju had changed their bodies, they could still feel each other's feelings. Yun Jian smiled. A teardrop formed in her eyes. It swirled, but it did not fall in the end. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She just squatted down and hugged Yunju. She pressed her chin against Yunju's shoulder and nodded gently. Yunju raised his head. He reached out his little hand to grab the corner of Yun Jian's clothes. There was a faint smile on his little face. "Sister, yes." Yun Jian stroked Yunju's hair. All the regret and pain seemed to disappear at this moment. At this moment, the feeling of regaining what she had lost was indescribable by Yun Jian. Her younger brother's death had always been a knot in her heart. Now that her younger brother had been reborn like her shackled heart was also freed. However, she still wanted to take revenge for what happened in her previous life. Her younger brother did not die. This was a favor from God. However, the pain that her younger brother had suffered was real. Yun Jian swore that if she had the chance in the future, she would let the Inferno Ring suffer the consequences of angering her. Yun Hailan's injury was not serious in Yun Jian's mind. Perhaps because of her experience in her previous life, Yun Jian thought that as long as it was not fatal, it was not a serious injury. However, in the eyes of ordinary people, Yun Hailan had already been seriously injured. Yun Hailan had been stabbed in the abdomen. The wound was blurry. She had to lie in bed for half a year to recover slowly. In short, she had to recuperate slowly to recover to her previous state. Yun Jian sent Yun Hailan abroad to recuperate. She also told Yun Hailan that she would take good care of Yunju. At first, Yun Hailan was too embarrassed to agree. After all, Yun Jian had paid for her treatment after the accident. She didn't have the face to ask Yun Jian to help her take care of the child. However, after Yunju expressed her willingness to follow Yun Jian, Yun Hailan relented. Before Yun Hailan was sent abroad to recuperate, she thanked Yun Jian with tears in her eyes and told Yunju to listen to Yun Jian. Yun Jian contacted the best hospital overseas. By the time she sent Yun Hailan over, it was already the afternoon of the next day. The next day, Yun Jian held Yunju's hand and showed her most beautiful smile. They stood under the sun and waited for Chu Ning and the others who had just come down from Weiwu Mountain. Chu Ning and the others arrived at the top of the mountain and stayed there for a night before coming down. They had talked about all this in their phone calls. In the end, Yun Jian did not see Qin Yan and the rest of them again. When Chu Ning and the others boarded the train back to Longmen City with Yun Jian, Chu Xiangnan even teased Yun Jian with a chuckle. "Oh, I didn't know that you, Yun Jian, have the ability to kidnap someone's little brother. So, you're planning to do this by not going up the mountain with us?" As he spoke, Chu Xiangnan glanced at Yunju. Yunju shrunk toward Yun Jian shyly. "No one will think you're a mute if you don't speak." Chu Ning added to Chu Xiangnan with a grin. "Or maybe you want me to turn you into a mute." Yun Jian swung the butterfly knife in her hand with a grin. Her smile was beautiful and innocent. "No, no, no. Forget it." Chu Xiangnan waved his hand immediately. The group was overjoyed. Even Jiang Weiwei, who had always disliked interacting with others, was slowly becoming a part of the group. Jiang Weiwei's change had only begun recently. The train returned to Longmen City at night. After Yun Jian parted with the group, she held Xiao Yunju's hand all the way home. Holding Xiao Yunju's hand, Yun Jian had just stepped into the villa when she saw the tall figure sitting on the sofa. It was Ce. She was stunned but still held Xiao Yunju's hand as they entered the house. "Jijie, are we staying here from now on?" Xiao Yunju turned to ask Yun Jian when Ce looked over. "Yeah, Jijie will introduce Jijie's family to you." Yun Jian could not help caressing her younger brother's head with a wide smile. Ce was already striding over with her long legs. He frowned slightly. Since Yun Jian came in with the little guy, she had not spared a glance at her. "Oh." Xiao Yunju pressed his lips together, his head bobbing up and down. He then looked around and asked Yun Jian, "Jijie, can I sleep with you tonight?" "Of course." "No." After Xiao Yunju asked, two voices sounded at the same time. Chapter 274. Yun Jian and Yunju were both stunned by Ce's words. Yun Jian, in particular, did not understand the meaning behind Ce's words. Yunju, on the other hand, shook his adorable little head from side to side. An 8-year-old child naturally did not understand that he had asked his older sister a question. Why was his older brother, who was so handsome, not allowing him to sleep with his older sister when his older sister had already agreed to it? Before either of them realized what was going on, Ce's tall and broad figure appeared in front of Yun Jian. He raised his good-looking eyebrows slightly and turned to look at Xiao Yunju. His short hair tilted to the side as he repeated his words in a mellow and pleasant voice, "You're not allowed to sleep with her." Yunju's arrival had been unexpected. Moreover, he had not helped Yunju clean up a clean room. However, Yunju wanted to sleep in the same room as Yun Jian. Even though Yunju was just a little kid, he would not allow it. Xiao Yunju frowned when he heard Ce's words. He looked at Ce in confusion and asked, "Big brother, why can't I sleep with my older sister?" The corners of Ce's lips quirked up, his handsome lips exuding a certain charm. He paused for a moment before he came up with a random excuse. "Because you're a boy." After that, he added, "You'll sleep in my room tonight." With that, Ce turned and went upstairs. No matter how much he explained, he didn't. "Ridiculous," Yun Jian said softly as she watched Ce go upstairs. She then reached out to rub her younger brother's head. "Little Zhu, you can sleep with big brother tonight." Yun Jian looked at her younger brother with a bright smile. "Okay." Yunju was a very obedient child. He quickly realized that he could not sleep in the same room as his older sister. However, big brother seemed very fierce just now. Forget it, he should listen to his sister. In the evening, when Qin Yiru and others went home, Yun Jian introduced Yunju's background to Qin Yiru. Of course, she would not tell Qin Yiru that Yunju was her younger brother in her previous life. She just made up a story, but it was close to the reality. She said that Yunju's mother was seriously injured and hospitalized. She felt sorry for Yunju, so she brought her home to raise her. Chin Yiru was kind-hearted, and since she started working at New Cruise, she had been saving more and more money. He could afford to raise another child. Moreover, Yunju was very likable. Chin Yiru soon fell in love with Xiao Yunju. He even kept calling her Xiaozhu, Xiaozhu. Yunjian handled the school transfer procedures for Yunju. The 8-year-old Yunju was already in primary 1. Now that he came back to Longmen City with her, Yunjian quickly got someone to handle the school transfer procedures and enrolled him in school as usual. At the same time, Yunjian went back to her normal school life. Since Zhang Xiaofeng and the others knew that Yunjian was the director of New Cruise, they had been coming to her every day. Of course, Yunjian did not forget to get Zhang Xiaofeng to train his body every day. In the blink of an eye, it had been almost 3 months since her rebirth. This Friday, Yunjian went to Yunyi's school to look for Yunyi after school. She could not find her in the classroom. He went to the music classroom. It's New Year's Day soon. Your brother participated in a program during the New Year's Day performance this year. He's busy rehearsing in the music classroom now. A boy in the class who could tell that Yunjian was Yunyi's younger sister pointed the way for Yunjian out of kindness. Chapter 275. The DE Senior High School that Yunyi studied in was an elite school, but not everyone could enroll in it. And for such a public school with such a foundation, its education level was also very high. Here, not only could students enjoy the guidance of first-level education teachers, they could even choose their own interests and hobbies. These hobbies included a variety of musical instruments. Every student who studied here could choose a musical instrument they liked to practice. At the same time, there were teachers who specialized in musical instruments who taught the students how to play. Just as Yunjian approached the music classroom, she heard the sounds of various musical instruments being played. The sound of all the instruments mixed together was like a cacophony of noise, extremely unpleasant to the ears. Now that she was closer, she could even see the young man standing in front of the classroom with his slender fingers strumming the guitar. He was as quiet and gentle as a clear spring. Her brother, Yunyi, was a guitar student. He was very good at it. Yunyi had come into contact with the guitar before he studied in this school. Yunyi came into contact with the guitar because of his junior high school teacher. Yunyi's junior high school teacher was a beautiful woman who loved to play the guitar. When Yunyi became obsessed with the guitar, his junior high school teacher knew that Yunyi liked it but could not afford a guitar to practice due to her family's financial situation, so she gave her guitar to Yunyi. Yunyi had been teaching himself to play the guitar and had not stopped since. Xiao Jian. Yunyi noticed Yunjian quickly. He kept his guitar and placed it aside before going to Yunjian. Go. Yunjian called out with squinted eyes and commented to Yunyi, "You played well." It was indeed well done. Yunyi chuckled in embarrassment and led Yunjian into the music classroom. The music classroom was currently filled with the sound of various musical instruments being practiced diligently. It was very noisy. "Yunyi, who's this cute little girl?" Just as Yunjian was looking around, an unfriendly voice rang out. A pretty girl in a pretty pink dress with regular features stood in front of Yunjian, looking at her maliciously with a hint of threat in her tone. At first glance, Yunjian did not feel anything special about the girl. "She's my younger sister, Yunjian." Yunyi answered with a smile and introduced the girl to Yunjian. "She's Chen Yubing, the main pianist for our New Year's Day performance." Yunyi gave a simple introduction. Yunjian, on the other hand, noticed it. The girl named Chen Yubing kept glancing at Yunyi, the adoration in her eyes was clearly visible. Yun Jian also realized that Chen Yubing had a lot of opinions about her at first, but when Yun Yi said that she was his younger sister, Chen Yubing's expression changed again. Wow, you're Yun Yi's younger sister. Chen Yubing shouted and glanced at Yun Yi. Then she walked over and pulled Yun Jian to the only piano in the music classroom as if she was an old friend. At the same time, Chen Yubing was still mumbling to herself, as if she was afraid that others would not know how good she was. Little girl, is this your first time here? Hee, do you want to learn how to play the piano? Although I'm not very good now, I'm only at the 9th grade of piano, but I can teach you how to play. Chapter 276. Although Yun Jian did not like Chen Yubing, she still followed her. She could feel that her brother only treated Chen Yubing as a classmate, but she could not deny the pride and arrogance in Chen Yubing's tone when she spoke to her. She was trying to curry favor with Yun Jian. The reason was simple. Yun Yi was her brother. Come, sit here. Chen Yubing gestured for Yun Jian to sit on the stool in front of the only grand piano in the music room. Chen Yubing then stood aside and pressed a few keys on the piano. She lifted her thumb to press one of the keys and introduced it to Yun Jian. Little girl, this key is do. As she spoke, Chen Yubing pressed a few more buttons and explained them to Yun Jian one by one. Yun Jian acted like she did not understand anything and nodded with a slight smile. Yun Yi was standing beside her. Yun Yi only smiled. His cheerful face was refreshing. It was undeniable that Yun Yi was very handsome. He was the kind of guy who looked clean. It was no wonder that Chen Yubing would raise her head to look at Yun Yi from time to time. The adoration in her eyes was obvious. Especially when Yun Yi looked at his sister sitting in front of the piano with a smile on her pretty face and her red lips curled up. He felt comforted. After all, in Yun Yi's heart, Qin Yiru had worked hard to raise the two of them until now. He felt that he could live a hard life, but he did not want his mother to suffer. Even more so, he did not want his sister to live at the bottom of society. In this era, not everyone could afford to learn the piano. Yun Yi had a huge wish in his heart. He hoped that he could work hard to get into a university and earn money to support his family after he graduated. Not only did he want to support his mother, but he also wanted his sister to live a good life. A good life where she could learn whatever she wanted. Of course, Yun Yi did not know that Yun Jian was the chairman of New Cruise. Chen Yubing stood aside. She could feel that Yun Yi had been watching her teach Yun Jian how to play the piano. Chen Yubing's heart was pounding. At the same time, Chen Yubing had an idea. She wanted to show off in front of Yun Yi. Little girl, can you stand up for a while? I'll play a song for you. Then, I'll teach you. Chen Yubing tried her best to soften her voice as she spoke to Yun Jian. Yun Jian smirked and stood up. She wanted to see what tricks Chen Yubing was up to. When Chen Yubing caught Yun Yi watching from the corner of her eye, she took over the latter's spot eagerly. Placing both hands on the piano, she played a smooth and coherent tune. This was the most fluent and coherent piece she had ever played. As the gentle music played, the surrounding students who were busy practicing their New Year's Day performances could not help but stop to listen to Chen Yubing's performance. They could not help but exclaim. Chen Yubing glanced at the praises from the corner of her eyes. She was immensely pleased with herself, but there was also a trace of pride. She was so outstanding. How could Yun Yi not like her? The song ended. Chen Yubing gave up her seat and let Yun Jian sit in front of the piano again. She then spoke to Yun Jian gently, Little girl, you can try to learn the song I played just now. There was an indescribable sense of pride in her words. Yun Jian nodded gently. She paused for a moment before her fair and slender fingers touched the piano. Then, her hands suddenly became nimble. A song that everyone was familiar with flowed out from the piano under Yunjian's fingers. It was indescribably beautiful. Wasn't this the song Qin Yubing played just now? Yun Yi's sister knew how to play too. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.